of Tuesday, July 12th to order. And
Recording in progress.
the first item is approval of the agenda.
Second.
Moving seconded, there is an amendment, addition, as I think it was 3D, we were gonna add it. Due to concerns about COVID-19, Middlebury College has requested the board's approval of the addition of outside consumption permits in conjunction with the already approved first and third class licenses for Atwater's Common Dining in the Grill. So 3D would read approval of outside consumption permits for Middlebury College for Atwater Commons in the Grill in conjunction with the board's prior approvals of first and third class liquor licenses for these facilities, and it's pending public safety review. Are there any other changes or amendments that anybody would like to make? Okay,
I'll be abstaining from the meeting minutes.
okay, abstention from the meeting. I will point out, Chief Tom Hanley received the Outstanding Service Award, and for all those out there watching, kudos, congratulations, Tom. Okay, if there's nothing else for change, then all in favor of approving the consent, I'm sorry, I went on to the consent agenda. Did I go on to the consent agenda?
Yeah, you did.
I did.
You did. That's okay.
Yeah, you're doing
So,
changes
wait a second,
to it,
no, I'm
and then
changing, I'm changing the
You're
agenda.
changing the agenda,
In the
and now you need a
consent agenda.
motion.
So, no, I
Well,
didn't do a motion.
Let's
I was
accept
reading what the
agenda.
motion would be that we're adding.
Right.
Yes, okay.
I meant motion
So
to
all in favor of approving the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Did someone make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a motion and a
I
second.
totally missed that.
Well, I thought we.
Can we start over?
Can you replay the tape? I thought we just did the agenda, not the consent agenda.
We did,
Yes, we just
but in the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, and then you added it,
I'm
okay.
amend-
But the
I'm
change
adding
to the
this-
You're
agenda was
adding
the
it to the
change to the
consent agenda in the regular agenda. Here we go.
Now we're on to the approval of the consent agenda.
Could be a long night.
Yes, I hope it isn't. Now, approval of the consent agenda is next. And-
Moved.
and
Second.
okay, moved and seconded, it is the amended consent agenda that I added. And we have a abstention from the select board meeting minutes, because Farhad was not there.
I should also,
And we do congratulate Tom once again. So all in favor of approving the amended consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, citizen comments. And how many are here for comments that are not otherwise covered? Okay, if we could keep it brief, and I'll have you come up to the table and state your name.
My name's John McFarland. I live at 53 Washington Street Extension. And I passed out a 4-page handout for everyone. I'm told I have 2 minutes, so we'll see.
Okay.
Last month, John Tenney brought to the attention of the board the Middlebury College student parties at 53 North Pleasant Street, facilitated by a landlord who had the brilliant idea of setting up outdoor facilities for students, so as not to damage his own apartment. Well, he also owns a second property which is next to me, and the students moved in February 13th, and the noise problems began that evening and techno music coming into my house, tempo of 0. But I've most recently become concerned because he has now put in facilities for outdoor parties next door to me. Maybe a fire pit and a bunch of Adirondack chairs, and inexplicably tore down the border fence between our 2 properties while we were away. So I have on the sheet of paper I distributed to you 5 questions and comments and proposals. I'm halfway through my time, so I'll be brief. Number 1, The Middlebury Town Charter has noise quiet hours that begin at 1 AM on the weekends. I suppose we roll that back to something consistent with the city of Burlington, like 10 PM. And also, regarding noise nuisance, there stipulates that a person is fined $1,000 for violating that noise nuisance. And perhaps that person should extend to all tenants of a house that's prone to noise. Item 2, the Middlebury zoning regulations talk about rooming houses, and the rooming houses have conditional use permits, and I think we need to clarify exactly what is meant by that, because I think that's a pretty important consideration. Item number 3, Middlebury College Department of Public Safety posted a protocol regarding noise complaints originating off campus. And I emailed Sue Ritter asking if any of the students at 53 North Pleasant Street were disciplined for that. And she said that's information she can't share. So I'd like the board to ask them, has anyone ever been disciplined under this sort of noise complaints? And number 4, students living off campus also come under the purview of the Middlebury Police Department, town police department. So I'd like to know what their protocol is regarding these noise complaints in large street parties. And do they request identification from students to check for registration? Lastly, number 5, and as this is separate from noise complaints, the proliferation of off-campus student housing is impacting affordable housing in our town. The house next to me had 3 families living there, and that men were purchased the place, turned off their heat, got the propane tank, moved out, and we've lost some more affordable housing. I went twice over time.
Okay, thank you.
John Kenny,
Thank you,
quick
John.
follow-up on my meeting with you 1 month ago. It has been quieter in recent weeks because there are fewer students there, but they're still having small gatherings, and they're still coming over to our property to urinate because they don't have any facilities on their property, and the landlord provides none and no access to the house. We're being stonewalled by the college, who's not communicating with John or with me. We have third-hand information that the lacrosse team that is in my neighborhood this year, or this year just completed, is to be replaced with alpine ski team for this coming year, and at John's, it's to be a football team. So the college is just thumbing their noses in our face on that. And the landlord is too. We have seen progress in that the state fire marshal has ruled the party barn a public assembly occupancy for which they are not permitted because they don't meet building code. They don't have a zoning authority with this town for that either. We've also seen the police chief issue an order that the landlord is declared a public nuisance and will be fined or receive other legal punishments for continuing big party activity. And finally, this town has ammunition and enforcement opportunities in its ordinances that are there to be used and should be used to set this down. On the rooming house, boarding house business that John mentioned, that's defined in the zoning ordinances as any building where individual rooms are offered for rent on a weekly or monthly basis with or without meals. Off-campus houses occupied by more than 3 unrelated persons shall be deemed rooming houses. in the OFA zone where 53 North Street is, North Pleasant Street is located, that is a conditional use. And I'm sure that there are no conditional use permits for that property. So that is an area of enforcement. I also know that there's no listing of use, either permitted or conditional, for a bar or a nightclub, which is effectively what's being operated in that party bar. So we have zoning tools to use, and I would implore you to use those tools.
Mr. Teddy, one quick question. You said previously that, and tonight, that the college is stonewalling. I understand that they receive information from our police and have their own judicial activities that they do. But these are adults that we're talking about. What role do you think the college should have in how adults comport themselves in a neighborhood and in a community?
The college brings the students of whatever age they are to the community,
They're adults.
and they place those students in the community, and they approve the residences. They have a responsibility. They have a responsibility for organizing, placement, controls, and supervision, and they're failing that miserably. And I'm calling them. They need to do their job. They have to be good neighbors and good citizens, just like the rest of us.
John, did you prepare that, such as your cohort, John, prepared for us? Your analysis of the zoning issues that could potentially play? Or can you send me an email with that?
I can send you an email.
If you could do that.
Just wrapping that up.
And as I had figured before, I think we have what we need. It's just a matter of enforcement, and I mean,
And time is slipping away on us, so I'm
No,
very
I don't
concerned
think,
about us.
I don't think time's slipping away, John. It's been a month.
No,
let's get
I
real.
mean, and before the kids get back.
Yeah, okay. So if you could send me that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
very good. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
You've got one more.
Oh, one more, yeah?
One more. I wanted to give them space on both chairs. My name is Colleen Brown, and I know tonight on the agenda is a report on the process for the master plan related to the airport. And the select board has been very generous in terms of listening to the neighbors and trying to get an impression from what we're calling the MANA, the Middlebury Airport Neighborhoods Association, is interested in. And I just wanted to take this time to update the select board that the MANA group is trying to put together a single statement that we can present that would address the merits of the master plan. And since that's not on the agenda tonight, I just wanted to give you that update because it seemed like it didn't quite fit into that agenda item. But we will be addressing the merits and trying to put our thoughts together and give the select board and V-Trans and the FAA all a very concise, thorough statement on each of the points of the master plan and where we have objections, where we have concerns, where we're supporting it. And we'll do that in due time, as the deadlines come about, we'll meet those deadlines.
Okay, thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
Now is Jen joining? Oh, Judy. Judy's got her hand up. Judy? Judy, are you with us?
You had your hand up, or are you all set? Okay, maybe we'll circle back to you at some later point. Thank you.
Okay. In accordance with.
Can you hear me?
Now we
Yes,
hear
I
you.
can hear you. Go ahead, Judy.
Judy? We lost you. Judy, I need to move on with the meeting if I can't get
She's
contact
coming in
me
as a
here.
panelist. Maybe that one. Judy, you're on mute? Okay, we can't hear you, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Now we got you.
Yes.
Okay, this is like a Verizon commercial. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I have two questions, or two statements. One, this format is really difficult to zoom into. It's difficult to hear, and it's difficult to know. Yikes. How do I know I'm in attendance? I really don't have anything to say. I just want to know if I'm in attendance. How do I know that?
If you can see us and hear us, you're in
I
a,
can't hear you.
you can't hear us at all?
Can you hear us now?
Can you turn up your speaker a little bit, Judy?
Okay. Okay. Can you say that again?
Can you turn up your speaker a little bit?
Yep, I've done that, so how do I know I'm in attendance?
If you can see us and hear us, then you are in attendance.
Oh my gosh, okay. That's all I know, and on video or like,
Yes, so the format, Judy, is called a webinar format. So you
Yeah.
are there as a participant as long as you can see us, and we can see on the screen that you're here. We can't see you physically, but we can see your name listed as
Okay.
attending.
sorry to take up your time, but
Judy,
all good.
Judy,
Thanks so much.
one more thing, if it's much clearer if you plug a headset into your computer and plug it in your ears, you'll hear significantly better.
Say that again?
Plug a headset into your
I
computer.
don't have a headset.
Well, I'll buy you one. I'll buy you one and get you one and plug it, and you can plug it in, and you'll be able to hear significantly better.
So I'm hoping you'll deliver that like tomorrow.
It might be a day later.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move on. In accordance with 24 VSA Chapter 117, Sections 4442 and 4444, the Select Board is conducting a public hearing this evening to take questions and comments from the Middlebury community regarding a proposed amendment prepared by the Middlebury Planning Commission to the town's zoning bylaws. In a moment, I will turn the hearing over to Planning and Zoning Director Jennifer Murray, who will review the draft bylaw amendment, which proposes modifications to the zoning map and the zoning subdivision regulations, and explain the purpose behind these changes. During her presentation, if you have a question or comment and would like to address the Select Board, please raise your hand if you are in the room, or use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please state your name for the public record, and I would ask that you keep your comments brief on any topic. Should be noted that in accordance with Section 4442, if the Select Board makes substantial changes to the proposed amendment, it must file those changes with the Town Clerk and Planning Commission and warn a second public hearing. With that, I will open the public hearing at 7:20 and turn the meeting over to Jennifer.
Great. Am I a co-host? Yes, please. Yeah, I've got some slides that'll help us along that I can share with you. Nice to see you all again.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. or a panelist, or whatever the official term is. Screen sharing is disabled. Okay. Were you all able to find the draft bylaws on the website and look them over?
Yeah.
Great. It's pretty nice. I was able, like, all through the month of May, I was able to visit different stakeholder groups and just kind of shop the regulations around. So I made sure that the college understood them, and ACCT met with us, and we sent them to Summit Properties, and we sent them to just anybody else that had like specialized knowledge about affordable housing, so that we made sure that we had some buy-in for these. There we go, it's working now, thanks. And so we're pretty happy with how they ended up in the end. We have a couple planning commission members here tonight. Chris is here, and Lucy is our chair. She's here tonight. So here we go. Great. So thanks for having me here to present these on your behalf here tonight. Thank you for looking these over. General timeline and context of this project. Back in 2017 is when we started seeking funding for our downtown master plan, which we did and adopted it in late 2020. And then in 2021, we hired a consultant, PlaceSense, to do a triple audit of our zoning. She looked at our zoning through a few different lenses. One was the recommendations from the downtown master plan, and another was the application for a neighborhood development area designation. And the third was just from the laundry list that the zoning administrators gave her, myself and Dave, about things that were not working well or broken. And she gave us over 140 recommendations, and gave us some draft language and some really cool graphics to include in the plan. And so then, between reviewing those things and afterward, the Planning Commission had over 26 meetings. It says over 25, but it ended up being 26, 27 at the end, to go through and just sort of refine her recommendations. This is in general the timeline for adoption. I mean, you're well into it now. The Planning Commission has already had their public hearing and sent the zoning amendment to you, the Select Board. This is your first public hearing. And then after this hearing, you'll request edits from the Planning Commission and either choose to adopt the bylaws as they are tonight, or if you have changes, we have to decide if it's a substantial change. If so, you'll need to have another meeting. But we're really shooting for an effective date at the end of August, September. Hopefully would be the time that we could get the NDA designation. And then that's a lovely thing, because when we have an NDA designation, affordable housing developers like Summit Properties can really get their funding in order to try to hit the next construction season. So the Planning Commission tried really hard to keep up a breakneck pace to get this to you as soon as possible.
Jen, of course, I know all these acronyms, but if you could spell them out for anyone who might not.
Yeah,
that'd
the
be-
presentation's so hard because it goes into detail later on, but, so, NDA is a neighborhood development area,
Thanks.
and it's a state designation that provides an affordable housing developer with various incentives. And so the idea is we can make our regulations as great as we like, but what with the cost of construction, both materials and labor, unless we can provide a little additional incentive, we might not see a lot of development down here, because they could just as easily be building in Chittenden County and getting reaping more for their money. So that incentive will really help us be, attractive to them. So, yeah, this is a public process. I just sort of explained, we've got that downtown master plan we can rely on. That's exactly the way you're supposed to do it. That's textbook, to have a big community planning process, a lot of input before you start changing regulations that deal with things like downtown housing. That's exactly what the downtown master plan was focused on. So we're in good shape. And then Planning Commission meetings and in-person stakeholder meetings really helped fill out the input that we used, me and the Planning Commission, in terms of the changes you see tonight. So we went over the technical assistance that we had, you know, from me to PlaySense to TPUDC, our downtown master plan consultant. We didn't do it alone. And so then I just tried to refine like the three basic purposes of the amendment. Like one is to encourage downtown vitality. The other is to encourage strong neighborhoods, specifically in and around downtown. And the third is enable construction of new mixed income neighborhoods. So what do we mean by, what do we do to encourage downtown vitality? We modernized our zoning language and definitions. We're trying to capture uses and visions identified in the downtown master plan that may not have been adequately captured in the existing regulations. So we're just sort of updating those. We added provisions for outdoor dining and public art and downtown farmers markets and pop-ups and mobile food carts. I did a little training, just wanted to capture that screenshot for you. You know, this is an expert in planning saying, you know, we need to be attuned to the fact that consumer preferences have changed in our downtowns. Previous generations were consumers of goods, your department stores and your antique shops. And now the new generations, they're consumers of experiences, which Karen's definitely been telling us for some time now and doing a great job helping with. So we shouldn't just be designers and planners, but experience builders. And so I'm hoping that these regulations, you know, really sort of capture that. One place that we try to capture that sentiment is trying to protect the social space and the sort of pedestrian interest in the downtown core. We have a fairly tiny downtown, and we have to make sure it stays vital in the few, you know, the limited blocks that we have. And so there is a provision in there that says that on Merchants Row, Park Street, Main Street, ground floor businesses need to be active uses, and we have those coded in our table what an active use would be, and that's, you know, retail and other places that you would visit as a customer, restaurant, performance space, et cetera. And that's to keep these downtown spaces that are on the ground level active. So just a note on some of the lessons we learned in the downtown master plan. We know that there's a shortage of workforce housing. We interviewed, Dan was there, interviewed local hotel owners, restaurants, retail stores, large institutions, and it revealed that, I wish there wasn't this little box here. It revealed a significant shortage of housing for their employees anywhere near the downtown area. And, you know, when they could find something in their range, it tended to be of substandard quality. And then missing middle housing. The study indicated a significant impact in demand for missing middle housing in downtown Middlebury. And so that means a range of affordable choices, all shapes and sizes, all kinds of neighbors. Our communities obviously do better with middle class and workforce homes near job, schools, and transit. And it's a nationwide issue, it's a statewide issue, it's not just Middlebury. Just a few statistics of interest. These are like nationwide statistics. I would say that some of these will be even more exaggerated in Vermont. The household sizes are shrinking. Nearly 30% of households are single-person households. Families being redefined, 75 to 85 of households won't have children in them by 2025, so they need a little smaller footprint. You know, there's a demand for a different size, different kind of house. And so this is just a graphic that shows you what I mean by missing middle housing. You know, it's duplex, fourplex, these cottage courts and townhouses, multiplexes. You know, and over here on the left is what we have, like predominantly like these detached single-family homes. Over on the right is something that you might find in Winooski. Maybe it's a little rich for our blood, like on the right side, but that missing middle is, you know, where we'd really like to incentivize some housing, because it tends to be smaller sizes and, you know, more affordable for these other kinds of family types that we're talking about. So that's the gist of it. And don't forget your rapidly aging population. We heard a lot of input during the downtown master plan that there are people, empty nesters, who would like to move to like a small, well-furnished place in downtown, and then that would free up their house for a family. So shifting demand for walkable living. These are just some more statistics from the last APA conference. But, you know, people who are looking for walkable living are looking toward a place like the downtown area. I promise this whole presentation isn't this dry, but I feel like I just kind of need to give you this background, a little piece. But so downtown Middlebury is kind of constrained, and we don't have a lot of blighted areas for large-scale redevelopment. There's a map showing that. So, you know, on the left, we're constrained by the college campus. To the north, we're constrained by Weybridge. These dark green areas to the east are the town forests. And so You know, much like Burlington, like when I lived in Burlington, I was always disappointed because there wasn't like an old spaghetti restaurant or something, you know, there's no like old district because Burlington itself is constrained by the intervale on those wetlands on the north and the lake on the left. You know, so they've had to use every bit of space to its you know, highest and best purpose, and they tear down old things and build new things in their stead. And so Middlebury has a sort of interesting similar situation where we're a bit constrained. So we have to use the space that we have wisely. And so in the downtown master plan, we had this map, which showed, this is a housing opportunities map that showed some vacant parcels with opportunity for housing. And that sort of translated into our zoning map here. Everywhere you see this dark brown is the R20 district, which scares some people because it sounds like 20 units per acre, and it is 20 units per acre, but it's 20 units per acre if there's no wetlands, if there's no other constraints, you know, like you have to look at the site. You're not actually going to get 20 units an acre out of it. You shouldn't just do multiplication like 100 acres times 20, 2,000 units. Oh my God, you know, like there's actually like a little bit of site plan magic that comes in there. There are site constraints that will keep a developer from fully developing the parcel. But in general, R20, the dark brown, these are vacant parcels where we would like to encourage new neighborhoods and new development. And so I just think it's really good that the Planning Commission has looked ahead and just tried to identify those. Now, we coupled that with some zoning that says that if you're building in that district, or if you're building in this pink district or this orange district, and it's 5 or more new units, then it triggers what's called the traditional neighborhood design standards. And it's a set of special standards like a PUD. You're probably most of you familiar with the PUD standards. It's like a PUD, like where there's specialized standards that ensure that this new neighborhood has the appearance that you want, that it's walkable, tree-lined streets, that houses are oriented correctly so that your front door is on the sidewalk and not just hidden away. You know, you're not just facing a garage. These are all elements of good design for healthy, beautiful neighborhoods, but they're also elements that the state requires for the NDA designation. That's right, the TND standards for the NDA designation, which is so confusing. But so in order to get that incentive designation from the state, we need to literally check boxes in their checklist that our zoning requires that new construction looks like this. So that's what we've done with the TND standards. And then, you know, we expanded some mixed-use options near the downtown core. So this Heritage Industrial District, the light peach here, is a new district that allows really high residential density, but then also allows some commercial uses to go with it. And this mixed-use district, it replaces our former VRC district, which, you know, it's not much different actually from the VRC, but what we've done is we've extended it up the right side of Exchange Street on that side, because when we studied our industrial district, we compared it to a lot of other towns and found that it's really weirdly close to downtown. And we tried to figure out how we were gonna, I say deal with that, like it's a good problem to have on our zoning map. We compared ourselves to Winooski. They actually have an industrial district walking distance from their downtown. And what they did was they made it a nice mixed-use corridor that transitioned you from those industrial manufacturing uses into the apartment buildings and the offices that are characteristic of that downtown core. And so that's what this mixed-use district attempts to do. That experiment is only on one side of Exchange Street because we have to acknowledge that there are, you know, some pretty heavy commercial uses and a railroad track on the other side that wouldn't be good for living right next to. And so, like, what does this look like? Just reminding you that this was one of the images from that downtown master plan. This is in front of the Shaw's Plaza. It was one thing that our urban designer said we could potentially do in the future. You could like close off the bank exit and put in homes like this. And so what he's showing you here is retail on the ground floor and apartments up above. And so that's what we mean by mixed use. And this could also be like, you know, several stories higher as well, and you'd fit in some more apartments. And so that's just kind of like that's just kind of what you would anticipate potentially being in those districts. And then just the neighborhoods in general, we wanted to encourage strong neighborhoods in and around our downtown, like just making sure we take care of and encourage more of the good things in what we already have. So this on top is our existing zoning, and this on the bottom is the proposed zoning. So on the top, there's this really big, light yellow district, the high-density residential district. And it doesn't really, it doesn't necessarily fit all the different neighborhoods that are, in the high-density residential, because the neighborhoods really sort of vary. They're different ages, you know? So we just kind of split it up, and we just broke it up into smaller sub zoning districts to sort of, and then we changed the lot size and the setbacks and things like that to more accurately typify what was happening in those neighborhoods. Because when you're over here on the end of Weybridge Street, when you're over on like Budolph, you know, you're not in the same kind of neighborhood. It doesn't have the same kind of feel. You know, South Street doesn't feel like Budolph. I don't know if this is of interest, but I don't know. I feel like I could talk about that for a long time. I don't want to get lost in it. But basically, we just took like a great big catch-all district and divided it up into an individual district that sort of matched the neighborhoods that were there. I'm happy to answer more questions about that. And then, you know, part of encouraging strong neighborhoods too is encouraging infill development with accessory dwelling units. And so we loosened up the rules on accessory dwelling units even more. And now that we're broken up, you know, sort of by neighborhood and have several other zoning districts, we were able to lower the side setback in a few different areas that you could add an accessory dwelling unit. And that's an example of what we mean by accessory dwelling units. These are in Middlebury. I don't know that anyone lives in this garage, but it seems like a good idea too. And this is just a couple graphics I wanted to show you from that traditional neighborhood design section, that PUD section we have that's triggered by the 5 or more units in the R20 and a couple of the other districts. It actually shows you street standards, you know, like there's actual standards in there so that we can work with a developer when they submit an application to make sure that that we get what we want, but then also from their perspective, so that it's a little bit more prescriptive, so they know what to expect when they come in. So standards for creating a green space, standards for creating a pedestrian street. There's affordability provisions. There's provisions for varying the type of housing every so many units. And so, I don't know if there's a good picture in here, but. So sometimes people like hear the term affordable housing and they balk, but this is what we're talking about when we're talking about affordable housing. We're talking about different housing types for different kinds of families at all ranges of incomes. You know, it's not like the Bronx or something. I studied a lot of that in grad school and I really liked it, but then I ended up working in a rural area, so So, yeah, we altered the definition of social service facilities that Warren's mentioning. When we're talking about strong neighborhoods, we altered the definition and we made sure that we had uses in there that closely fit the things that we were hearing from the service providers that they need to provide. So, like, you know, recovery residence is a new one, you know, as different from transitional housing, as different from residential care facility, and then coded that across the different zoning districts. And I met with I met with that consortium group, the Continuum of Care group, that's composed of Charter House and John Graham, and you know, you've been to their meetings a couple times, just to make sure that they were okay with this, and I think I got some pretty good buy-in, and I left the door open in case they want to change anything down the line. That's the thing. None of this is set in stone. We could always do another bylaw amendment again next year. Job security for me, right? So the NDA area, this is just a little graphic that shows really quickly some of those incentives I was talking about. So the neighborhood development area is all the way to the right. And basically, if you are able to meet their definition of, I forget what the term is. See, what's the term for what's the term? It's like affordable. It's like an affordable housing project, right? But they call it something else.
Oh, priority housing project.
Thank you. A priority housing project. If you meet their definition of a priority housing project, then you qualify for. Then you're exempt from Act 250, and you'll get a reduction in water and wastewater fees, and an exemption from land gains tax, and all of these things that are over my head, but I know help developers when they're putting together their pro formas. So these are great. These aren't incentives that we have to pay for on the town level. It's like a state level incentive that we absolutely should be reaping the benefit of. This is a draft map, but like basically if that maroon splotch is the downtown area, then you get to go another half a mile outside your downtown area with your NDA designation. And I've been talking to the state about even bumping out in a couple places a little bit further as well. And then once we get the bylaw in place, then we can start to really, turn up the heat on the state and having that conversation and defining the NDA area a little bit better. So, yeah, that's like the general overview. I feel like I should probably mention that we had some changes to the. Yeah, well, ideally you've looked through what's online. I've just told you what you need to know, I think, about the affordable housing aspect of these changes. We also had a little bit of housekeeping changes too. And one was class 3 wetlands and buffers. We took those out. The state regulates class 1 and 2 wetlands. The town was going above and beyond regulating class 3 wetlands. They're a little bit hard to identify, but the Conservation Commission, good news, is working on some wetlands mapping with a consultant that we've hired over the last several years. So they're close to having some mapping that might let us add in the class 3 wetlands again in the future once we have something to use to regulate it. Floodplain regulations remain unaltered, just a couple changes in accordance with state law. Fluvial erosion hazard areas, that was this, like a subject of some debate during the Planning Commission hearing. It was something staff proposed to take out altogether, these fluvial erosion hazard areas, which are above and beyond the floodplain. We had a letter from regional planning, involvement of the Conservation Commission, the Planning Commission. I think we've all reached an amicable solution where we leave fluvial erosion hazard areas in there, but just dial it back a little bit so that the 6 or 7 affected property owners in East Middlebury could rebuild a garage if it fell down or do something with their property. The affected property owners are right at Gristmill Bridge Road, like the Marcuses and some other people around there. Cannabis was something that we really grappled with. We didn't have a definition for retail cannabis. We added one, and we put it in the table of uses. And we tried to think about where we would want retail cannabis to be, and selected the mixed-use district, like over by Shaw's, the protected highway district going down Route 7, but did not select this section of downtown from the Congregational Church up to here. And since we made that decision, we actually had an application come in sort of under the wire for across the way at Detman's law office. It won't be his law office, obviously, it'll be a retail cannabis store, like when he completes his move. So that helped us, I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of you guys, but I think that helped us feel like, well, at least there's one in the downtown area, let's wait and see how that goes, and we could always, expand it to some other areas later on. But again, that's completely up to you guys. We did our best on that one, that was a tough one. I think that's all I have to say.
Any questions? Did anybody get a chance to look through all that? It was pretty well done. Everything we read was the changes. And if you're looking to tie it back to something, you have to go back to the, what was it, 2018, I guess was the last final one, but you'd have to go back to the complete packet of the zoning regs.
I got a quick question. Is there a tension between having larger setbacks in the lower R residential zones and allowing infill development? How did you handle that?
Yeah, I think that, so when we had an R2 or an R4, it was an older neighborhood where we didn't see a lot of potential for infill development.
Just there hasn't been any, or you don't think that there's any interest in it?
Well, it was, what's the name of your street again? I always forget. Gorham Lane? Thank you. It was Gorham Lane and Budolph and, these sort of tract subdivisions, post-1940s subdivisions, where people didn't have a lot that was a whole lot larger than they needed in most cases, and so it's hard to picture like an additional structure that would need, to get really close to the setback. But that said, we do have a provision for setback waivers. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because the ZA asked me to ask you guys if it would be okay if, right now, the new bylaws say that you can grant a setback waiver up to 50%. Sorry, this bylaw regulation says that you can grant a setback waiver up to 50% of the setback for new construction and 30% for existing construction. And he's already gotten a few applications in where he feels like that's overly complicated. And he wanted to know if you guys would be willing to just go 50% on everything. And then if that's not working out, if we could dial it back to 30 for the one.
Yes, please.
Any thoughts on that?
He also requested that in the definition of subdivision, as we define what is a subdivision, what requires subdivision review, somehow it got in there that condominiumizing or making something into a condo would require a full subdivision review. And that's been kind of complicated as well. So he wondered if we could take the condo reference out of the definition of subdivision.
John had a comment on that.
Just asking, what are the steps to come in the process, just so we can understand how this will move forward?
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll let you know. How do you guys feel about the condo thing first, though?
So, when you condoize, you take an existing single-owner property.
Yeah.
And you now have some kind of agreement about shared spaces and multiple owners of that one property, is that correct?
Yeah, it's more like changing how the ownership would work. Like, instead of someone renting that apartment, now they can be the owner of that apartment. And so they go through this process with their attorney to make it a condo.
Yeah.
And that's happening to us over on Seymour Street, and it's just kind of ridiculous to think that we would need to send them through an entire subdivision process to accomplish that.
Seems like, I mean, is there a way to write in some sort of minimum number of units or something to trigger the full condo process? Because it seems like, I mean, I used to live in a house down here on South Street out there, that the college owned and had split up into, more than one unit.
Yeah.
So would that technically then be a condo?
Yeah,
If we owned it, I mean.
And we've actually talked to the town attorney about this as well. Like, none of them are proposing going halfway with this. They're saying, I think you should just take condo out of the definition of subdivision altogether, because it's something that you would do with your attorney. It's like it's a private legal type of a thing, as opposed to
Right.
something that should be regulated by zoning. And I was dumb and did not do this at the planning commission level, so now I have to hinder you with it, and I apologize.
I think that makes sense, right? There's not
I
any.
think you could tie it, you could really get tied in knots. Like our lake property is condominiumized in that all of the property is owned by three houses. So it's shared, but we own our houses. So, and that was a total legal, and we have a total of 4 tax bills. But, so it works, and it works well. And I don't think that the town needs to be involved in that. They'll have multiple lawyers involved, so I'll throw you in there. It'll take up a lot of your time. You got more to do than to worry about. You've already approved the buildings based upon,
Right.
then the ownership, I don't think that's our bailiwick.
That's the way to think about it, right? That unit wouldn't exist unless they met our dimensional criteria.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
Okay.
Everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
We're with you.
Should I answer John's question now?
Why don't you answer John on the process here?
Okay. So, depending on how big a change they want to make tonight, they'll either need to warn another public hearing, or they'll be able to just approve the bylaw. Or no, they'll be able to just say that this looks good. Either way, we have one more meeting coming up. So if they have a substantial change, then there'll be a public hearing where more input is taken. If they're good with it tonight, it'll just be a regular meeting to do the adoption.
And we find this for review on the regular town website.
Yep, yep.
Yes, and I think because they're so busy and maybe a little short-staffed, I had a letter to the editor, it was supposed to be published a couple weeks ago, so I feel bad because it did not get published. And I followed up on it today because I hadn't seen it in last week's Addison Independent either, calling attention to this. So I do feel like we should at least have a second meeting, whether it needs to be a hearing, but at least to provide opportunity to call attention. And I do know John Flowers wrote about this, and we've had other meetings that have been posted about this review as well, so.
Yeah, I don't know how much these warnings must have cost Kathleen, but they're long warnings in the legal section.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
And so, not everybody reads the warnings.
You could perhaps defer action without calling a hearing.
Right, that's what I'm suggesting, yeah. Any other questions from your review? I do have a couple. If you could go to section 7.
Two page.
776, the temporary structures and uses. There's a verbiage in there.
Do you have page number, Brian?
On the review, it's 45.
Gotcha.
I didn't have fancy enough of a system that I could highlight my stuff here, and there was so many pages, I didn't print it all out, but there was something about six, maybe it's not this one, 6 hours. There's,
Temporary structures and uses.
Oh, 6 months?
6 months.
Temporary uses.
I might be in the wrong section.
Oh, yeah, there's a word missing, isn't there, Brian?
Right there, temporary uses operating than 6 hours, there it is. Where, isn't that in that spot?
Yeah, what did we decide there, in less than 6 hours, right?
Section 776.
The draft that I have says temporary uses operating less than 6 hours in a given day or over no more than 3 days.
Yeah, the word less needs to be put in there.
The word less needs to be put in there.
Okay, thank you.
And is 6 hours the right amount, I guess is my question. If the farmer's market is there, do they ever do it for the full day, or would they ever? And should it be 8 hours, or where did we come up with 6 hours?
Yeah, Karen and I talked about this, and I think we were thinking mostly of the midnight stroll as 6 hours. It could be different if you want.
I just, excuse me, when I was reading through it, I was just thinking, well, 6 hours, I know it's probably a random number that you came up with trying to be scientific about it. But I was thinking, what about a one-day event that was an 8-hour day or something? Do we change the rules when it trips over that 6 hours?
Yeah, you think like 8, 10 hours? 8 or 10, maybe?
I was just thinking a day event, whatever a day event would be.
Okay.
If you did it from 9 to 6, you're talking about 9 hours, so maybe 10 hours.
Do we need to specify the number of hours in the
No,
day?
maybe
Maybe
just
it's just no more than 3 days in
days.
duration.
That's what I was thinking. just
Temporary
to-
uses operating more than a given day. So if it was more than a one-day event,
We did keep the 3-day in just to protect for the midnight stroll events, so that we could bring in pop-ups. It could be the same pop-up, for all 3 nights of the stroll, something like that. So that's what Jen and I were kind of brainstorming a way to sort of capture what's truly temporary as opposed to a pop-up that's coming in to set up for 6 months.
so why don't we say, look at that maybe, and then just, if you have a recommended change for our next meeting.
Oh, yeah, I think, what if we said temporary uses operating no more than 3 days in association with a particular event would qualify for this exemption? And then if it's gonna operate more than 3 days in association with a particular event, then it should be permitted as an actual use.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take out that 6 hours. It's silly, right?
Well, it seemed random to me
You
when I
guys
was
are okay with
reading
that?
through it.
Yeah, okay.
Then, on there has been, I would be remiss if I didn't just make sure we're clear on it, is there has been a lot of talk about the mobile food service and the desire. I know it came out in our master planning process that it was that people would kind of like to have it. And I did find in the existing regulations where that retail sales from a vehicle or stand, whether temporary or ongoing, would have to have a change of use permit, so would have to come to you to get a change of use. And I know you're trying to grapple with it here. Could you just explain, make sure I understand what we're doing with food carts here?
Yeah. So there's already that language, that fairly vague language in the zoning that, that we've interpreted as a food cart requiring a zoning permit. And so what the section 775 does is it just makes it a little bit clearer. And so the idea is if we clarify it, then we're encouraging that use. Because in the downtown master plan, we said we wanted them. So we want to make sure that we're enabling that use by being clear. Just like we try to be prescriptive with our developers about what our expectations are. How it would actually work is they would give us a permit. It wouldn't need to be like an engineered site plan or anything fancy. Just a Google Maps printout, just marked up with where the food carts are gonna go. What we really wanna do is send it to the police chief and the fire chief to make sure people are safe. So it's just a public safety consideration mostly.
And is this zone specific for the downtown area, or like if I was having a wedding at my house, does that now cover that?
Yeah, it says any mobile food service vendor on private property. So yeah, you should probably just get a permit for something at your house too.
'Cause I've brought food vendors to my business for customer appreciation days and everything. If it's a private event, can we define it as a public event for public events? Because that way you wouldn't have to get involved in private events? Can you look at that?
Like, does this encompass the bank always does like hot dog day? Does that then count as like a mobile food service when they give out the free hot dogs at the bank?
That's what he's done.
I love hot dog day.
I know,
I've missed it.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
When I was in Williston, there were people standing in line for hot dogs and then somebody, when I first started here, tried to put a hot dog cart in Champlain Fuels. And their plan was to have people like run across the Champlain Fuels parking lot and go get their hot dog and then run back across it. And you've got those trucks whipping in and out of those big. So I just want to avoid that kind of thing. That's a thought. Maybe we can add like weddings and other private parties to our list of exemptions so that you could still have this as it stands, but just have that exemption that would come
Yeah,
into
I'm just
play.
looking for not to get involved in all the private events, but when we have a public event, which is typically in our downtown, and whether you call it, and maybe you don't zone it, that you just do an exemption when it's a private, invite-only event or something like that, that it wouldn't be subject to that.
Right. Like weddings and private parties.
Right.
Yeah, we can have some draft language for your next meeting on that. We'll meet, I think we meet this Thursday, so we can talk about it then, and I'd like to get Dave Wetmore involved in that conversation too. Yeah, that's a good thought.
I don't want to flood your office either, you know?
Yeah.
Karen?
Right, but a burger night would be dangerous, but I guess that's because people are coming to, oh, with that, sorry.
I think Karen had a
I
comment.
just had one clarifying question about this, Jen. When I talked to you guys about this at the planning commission meeting, we had talked about the folks that are doing private properties, like for instance, Town Hall Theater, that's bringing in food trucks into the alley. They could submit an annual site plan for review. I see that in here, but one thing that I also see that I just wanted clarification on is the first sentence saying mobile food service vendors may apply for a zoning permit. So is the onus still on the vendor not the organizer.
Yeah, I don't know, like if you wanna talk about ownness, it's like whoever owns the property is the person who's gonna get the zoning violation.
I think that's the part that I'm just hoping, because the way that it's written, it sounds like the vendor themselves is who is supposed to apply.
Yeah.
And I would like to see it be the site that applies, so that we take the onus off of these vendors that potentially have to then do more paperwork to be able to come into the program.
So the way my permit application looks is you have applicants, and they sign as applicant and owner. And so it's not for me to decide who that applicant is gonna be.
Okay.
So it could be the vendor, it could be the realtor, it could be
Okay.
the organization.
Okay, just wanted the clarification on that, because as I said in the meeting, we're competing with other towns and trying to get some of these people here, and I don't wanna make it harder for them, I wanna try to.
I don't think that's gonna make it hard for them, no. I mean, if they call our office, we just give them the permit form and explain how to fill it out.
Right, but you're saying that the site can do that, not the vendor.
The site?
Yeah, so like Town Hall Theater would do it if they wanted to have food trucks.
Yeah, so if someone wants to
It wouldn't be Roll Up Rooster that did it.
So if someone wants to sign as owner and applicant, they can do so.
And we're okay as far as all of the rules, if the farmer's market wanted to come back downtown, we're all cleared with that. It seemed like there was a percentage that had to be agriculture, but, I mean, a farmer's market would.
Yeah, so if the farmer's market wants to be on public property, then it doesn't fall under zoning at all, and it would be a public assemblage permit.
Oh, okay.
But if a farmer's market wants to be on private property and wants to like qualify as a farmer's market under Ag and Markets Law, they would have to meet those stipulations that we have in here.
Okay,
And then we just added a couple little tweaks to make it more like downtown appropriate.
yeah. When I was reading through, I was getting confused.
It's
Thank you for
confusing.
the clarification on that.
Yep.
Okay.
Jen, we have a question from Elise Schanbacher,
Oh, great.
Addison County Community Trust. Is it true that the proposed updates apply now within 180 days of adoption? So currently, private parties would need a permit.
Is she gonna invite me to this private party? That affects my answer, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so, I mean, that is true, that under.
She said yes. She
Well, in that case, no, yeah, I think that since technically according to the law, once the bylaw amendment is warned by the select board, we need to review every incoming application under both sets of bylaws, and the more stringent takes effect. But since we're working this out, I bet we could find a way to not pay attention to Elise's party for a little while and just kind of like work it out with her. Because I think Brian makes a good point, so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it's, yeah, I don't know. Does her private party need a permit? Yes, that would be the technical answer. But would that really be the answer
She'll follow up.
that we would come up with? Yeah. We're not monsters.
I have a question. And we talked about this before, but if, let's say, the Marble Works gets a permit for the whole year, does that mean they can have different vendors? Each vendor doesn't have to also get a permit?
The way I read it is if they have a permit for their site and they say that this is where we're gonna put our food vendors, as long as they leave their food vendors there, they can rotate food vendors.
Is that what you mean by different vendors, different food
Yeah, I mean,
vendors?
because the way it says mobile food vendors may apply. If the Marble Works applies, then would they have different vendors? Do those different vendors have to also sign an application?
Different vendors that are not selling food?
Yeah, they're selling food, but they're like, one weekend they've got somebody and one weekend they've got somebody else.
Yeah, so, outside of the regulations, the way that we were talking about administering this to make it easier for everyone is to do sort of a master vendor permit, for the whole site. So in that case, it would be the person who owns the site or the property, it'd probably be the Marble Works, or maybe it'd be Lisa as the organizer. And then she would show us footprints on this plan.
Yes. Right? So different vendors could go in here. One week it could be Mr. Taco up in the right-hand corner, and the next week it could be Mr. Hot Dog.
Right.
In the same spot.
Right. But I imagine that permit would have a term on it as well. A term, you know, like a certain amount of time. So it wouldn't be like Mr. Hot Dog all year long, but like maybe just during the food room. So you're on the planning commission, so we'll have a lot of time to mull over these things on Thursday.
People think that this means, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. So you weren't really asking me.
Yeah. And I'm a strong proponent of that style of oversight, because you're talking about private property, and all, and our job isn't to vet vendors. Our job is to make sure that it's a safe and planned environment, and so I would argue it's overreach if we go beyond that. And so I do like your plan. I think it's really good. As long as, hopefully, we can craft something that makes it work like that, so it's workable for you, and it's workable and promotes what we've asked for it to promote. I had one other question, and some talk on the food carts is, I should have written them all down when I was reading it. Anybody else have any questions? See if it comes to me. Nobody picked up anything else? Boy. Yes, John.
Jeff, just you said you were struggling with the zoning of the cannabis dispensaries. I contend that the initial drive of the dispensary was to have a downtown to bring in traffic to the central commercial.
Then we ran into the question of how, in a tiny downtown like this, how many dispensaries would you like to line up on Main Street? Like, how many is the right critical mass of dispensaries? Yeah. So since we know we're getting one.
I heard that there was a dispensary going to be out by Great Market. I thought that was too far away.
I hadn't heard that one. Yeah, that would be kind of far.
Yeah. I think that is
Are there any questions, hands up online, Kathleen, at all?
All quiet.
None? Okay, Ross?
I was wondering, is there anything in the regulations that addresses solar orientation of buildings that are being built?
Yeah, there is.
So that, hopefully if they're not putting solar panels on the building right ahead, they can, down the road, maybe be solar ready.
Yep, there is. In the traditional neighborhood design standards, like as we're talking about tree-lined streets and sidewalks and things like that, we ask that they orient the building for solar gain to the extent possible. And then we did add a line that said, as we're evaluating the extent possible, we are allowed to take the financial considerations into consideration. Do that courtesy for the developer.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we have a couple things that we've asked you to look at. What's the feeling of the board on one of the potentially contentious issues that Jen pointed out is the cannabis retail in the downtown, and there is already one approved application, and the amendment would not allow any further, at least at this time. Thoughts from the board? Do we stay the course with Jen's recommendation, or with the planning commission's recommendation here, or do you have a different thought on it?
No, I think we should stay the course with them. I have not seen any data that says bringing cannabis shops downtown is going to improve downtown business. I have not seen any data of that at all. I would say if you want to improve traffic in downtown, I would get Discount Beverage to put their store right in the middle of downtown, because that's the busiest store in town. So if that's what you're looking for, let's have them downtown. But I'm I'm not in favor of cannabis being anywhere downtown. So if we're gonna get away with just this one over here, I'm comfortable with that, but I would not like not to see any more come into town. I don't want to build an economy on cannabis sales. I don't think that's what Middlebury is.
My instinct is exactly the opposite of that. I think that you don't let the first person to submit a permit have a monopoly on any business in your town. I think you let them compete and decide what the right model is based on what people want.
I'm also thinking about, and I don't know how, I haven't read all of the cannabis regulations from the state, so maybe this is inconsequential, but, is there an opportunity for some kind of retail establishment that sells other things? And there's also a little cannabis counter, and this would preclude them from having that, like something tasteful tucked in the back. I will say I was recently in Northampton, Massachusetts, which has a population of about 30,000. Their downtown is probably 5 times our size, and they have 4 very tasteful retail cannabis places that you would not know are cannabis places. They look like adorable little shops or whatever. I guess I'm mostly in agreement with Andy that we would never say you can only have one bookshop. We're not saying you can't sell wine downtown other than the one we have, or the one that I know of, which is in the stone mill. Like, we wouldn't stop somebody else. So that said, I'm kind of okay either way. There's at least the one, but I do feel leery about giving the people who are quickest off the start the chance to have a monopoly feels a little bit icky to me.
It's not necessarily a monopoly in the town.
No,
And-
but downtown.
Yeah, it's just in the district. I mean, I would say that Hannaford Shopping Plaza gets more business traffic than probably the downtown does, sadly. But that parking lot's full all the time. So if I was that's where I would think I would put my store, but.
So I don't know how many cannabis stores we need downtown, but I agree with Dan's statement about, if you say that cannabis store is bringing traffic downtown, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's gonna bring a lot of traffic downtown versus other businesses who can potentially bring more customers downtown.
I do think any store will bring, any new store will bring traffic downtown. I mean,
But
and I think we're in a place where we're struggling to find, as the retail environments of downtowns have changed, some places have left, some places are coming in, and I think there are a lot of business owners that are trying to find the niche. That's why I was wondering about a shop that sold, other things, but also cannabis, because a lot of places downtown that are successful are doing more than one thing, and they're making use of that space to do more than one thing. So I wouldn't want to preclude somebody from doing that. If the little cannabis in the background is what's helping to keep their shop afloat, and their shop has other stuff.
Should we ask Karen? Karen, what do you think?
Oh,
Yeah, really. Yeah, really. I go to you all the time.
Well, I was not prepared to answer this question tonight, but I will say that I think I'm in agreement with Lindsay on this, in that I really want to see us not be discriminatory. I gave up caffeine yesterday, sorry. Towards any business specifically. So I wouldn't necessarily want to see us, to her point, limiting the number of bookstores or the number of wine shops, or I think that we do owe it to our businesses to give a little bit of a free market opportunity. So that's where I'm coming in on this, but I'm also just looking forward to seeing how things play out here. I have yet to see data that supports one or another idea of what this actually does to a community like Middlebury. So I'm not really worried about it from that perspective. I'm excited for any of these new businesses to come in, and I'm sort of just wanting to see what that does.
Do you have a thought?
I have lots of thoughts about stormwater.
Heather's here for the culverts.
Yeah, I don't know. About this particular, I don't know what, I think I just, I don't know. I think both sides make great comments and, I guess I wanna see how it goes.
Esther?
I would say I agree with Heather in the sense of I hear both sides. But I think I'm gonna support Lindsay on this one, and Andy. You're saying the same thing, but seeing how it goes, but also giving space for others who they want to sell cannabis or sell other things, making space for that and seeing how that goes.
Are there any kind of shops that we would not want downtown?
Yeah, I could think of one.
Yeah, I can think of one too.
Spencer, please stay where you are. Don't come over here. If you don't know what Spencer is, good.
I think the free market would shut down a Spencer Gifts in downtown Middlebury pretty fast.
Okay.
I don't think
Yeah,
we
I
have to
think
worry
so,
about
too.
it.
I think so too.
Yeah, but like a sex shop, for example,
Yeah.
I've honestly seen tasteful ones that you would not know are there. Like, they just have something posted, like you have to be 18 or over to come in, and you wouldn't realize what it was until you go in, and the windows are tastefully covered, like frosted, and, you know, so. Well, we had a lingerie place, yeah.
Beyond that.
Yeah, well, I never went in, so. I just saw the laundry.
Nobody knew.
Okay, yeah, see?
So, just for, I've given a lot of thought to this because Jen pointed out the last time we met that this was gonna be an issue. And, here's my thinking on it. We voted in the community to support cannabis. The vote, while John says it was about the downtown, there was a few people arguing about that, but it was really about access for those who wanted to use cannabis. The vote was not, do we put a row of cannabis stores in the downtown? The vote was, do we approve the sale of cannabis in the town of Middlebury? I didn't take that as an overriding demand to populate our downtown with cannabis stores. We were talking at the time about where we would want them, whether we would want them downtown or not, back when we had that vote. Clearly, there is an approved cannabis store already that's coming, and we have actually shut down competition in some areas. The town of Middlebury cannot have another automobile dealership. You can't have a Tesla dealership. You can't have anything. So it's not like we're going to that extreme if we're saying that we are going to hold off on additional cannabis dispensaries in the downtown. I think there are certain things that could have a greater impact on to change the fabric of the downtown. There's different activities that can potentially have a big influence on what the downtown is and becomes. Certainly, I would rate a cannabis store in that particular category. And so I worry about when you have some critical mass, if this is, will it change the way the downtown is experienced by everybody? And so I'm not necessarily opposed to instituting this rule and just seeing how it goes, rather, it's not, with the ability to go back in and say, okay, it's been a positive experience, we can open it up to other retailers. But if it would it would allow us to ease our, kind of our foot into the water and see what that really is like in our downtown. And, you know, frankly, if you hear the general consensus, we have no parking down here, so if somebody really wanted a successful one, they'd have a drive-through, maybe out on Exchange Street or something like that. So, you know, this isn't like we're giving somebody a monopoly within the community. So the one thing that I fear is changing our downtown too rapidly over what we have traditionally had. And I would like to ease into it personally. And so I would be supportive of that regulation with the idea that we review it again next year. I mean, you could do this process pretty quickly if you were just making one change. And I don't think a year is really enough to know, frankly. It'd be a couple of years. So they're not even going yet.
If, one thing, if we decide to go that route, that I would suggest, although it would add a little bit of work for staff, is some tracking into the number of inquiries for new stores in the downtown. Like in that monitoring period of 2 years, has the Planning and Zoning Office seen, how many inquiries have they had about opening retail cannabis in downtown? Has it been 0? Has it been 20? I think that might have some impact on which way we decided to go on that.
I think we say we're not going to approve any, we're going to get fewer potential.
They'll go to
inquiries than we would
Bristol
otherwise.
or Brandon.
Yeah, which other towns in Addison County have retail authorized at this point?
No idea.
I think all the ones that have a cute downtown.
Virgins, Bristol,
Brandon. I could be wrong. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
I should probably mention one other thing to you. Like, I would feel bad in retrospect if I hadn't mentioned it. Like, so when we heard testimony from Dave Silverman, he talked about litigation. He talked about all the reasons why he thought that it was illegal to regulate retail cannabis differently than other kinds of retail, and was talking sort of litigiously. And when I talked to other planners, you know, Middlebury, unfortunately, was one of the first towns to opt in, and so we're sort of like at the forefront of all of this. A lot of planners in other towns are holding back to wait and see like how the litigation works out to figure out if that really is something that we can regulate or not, because some people think we can't. And then don't forget there's a local cannabis control board too. I mean, I was talking to Fred Dunnington and he was like, why not just regulate it through the local cannabis control board and not zoning at all? And there is some merit to that idea as well.
Are they stood up yet?
No, you guys, I think we'd have to vote to create one, wouldn't we? Yeah, it would be a local cannabis control board as opposed to the state cannabis control board.
We control alcohol through the select board.
And as you know, that's a fairly limited oversight
Yes.
the board has, and I suspect it would probably be similar for the cannabis. So we have to be realistic about that, and I don't know what the state has said that towns are able to do.
So nobody's made a decision whether select boards can be the local
There
control.
has been a decision about that, but I don't know if the regulations that supporting that, or what the extent of the oversight is. I could research that.
It's the same guidance document that we've been reading so closely, and, you know, even though the state gave us a guidance document, they didn't really explain what they meant by all these things, and so we won't really know what it means until there's a couple of lawsuits that get completed, and then we'll know what the towns are enabled to do, or what they're not.
So one thing I would like to avoid is any more litigation on the town's bill. So whatever the recommendation would be to potentially allow some of these other towns to foot the bill on the litigation would be where I would put my favor.
You've got the attorney in the state of Vermont that's the most passionate about cannabis, right here. I mean, no matter what you do, Silverman's gonna be litigating, so.
Yeah, here's his question. He's already got a shop approved
Right,
over
and he's
here. Is
already
he
got a
is he
shop.
gonna litigate to open up downtown? We'll see what kind of person that is. That's different.
That's what he said in the planning commission hearing, that he felt that it was unfair, but he was the first person
Oh,
in.
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Good on him then.
real
I'll keep my
un-
mouth shut. I feel like I'm making it worse instead of better for you.
So, let me just clarify then. So we've got a couple things for you to go back and look at.
Yeah, a couple easy things.
Well, and what if we say, so this one, you could go back and do any more digging, any more fact-finding or anything. If at the next time we meet on this, we decide we want to pull that out, can we then pull that out and approve it with that change?
It would cost you another month, unfortunately.
So we have to
Because
pull
it
it,
would
if
be
we're
a
gonna
sig-
pull it out, we have to pull it out now?
Well, no, I mean, you can pull it out anytime you want, but if you pull it out at the next hearing, then that'll be a substantial change, and you'll need to hold another hearing after that, which
So
will.
we need to make up our mind on this right now.
Yeah, maybe what you're deciding is if this is just a bigger issue than we can do in this round. Maybe we were,
Another process question. Let's say that we have a couple downtown cannabis stores and it does change character and people don't feel good about it. Can we ratchet back our opt-in through public process? Dan's shaking his head no.
There's something about what we can
you can put it to a second vote.
put it to a second vote, yeah.
Okay, so we can, like, say, oh, guess what, we're not a retail cannabis town.
Well, can you shut down a town, can you
I
shut
don't know.
down a
I
store
don't,
you've
can you
already
shut down
approved?
stores? I don't think you can.
That-
No,
that-
I
Once
don't
they're
think we
here.
voted in.
I
Once they're
don't,
here.
I think that would be opening the door for the tax bill.
You sound like us. Welcome to our world, right, PC? I mean, it's just such a big, convoluted issue. There's so much more to explore and learn about it. I guess maybe, I guess when we put it in there, we just felt like, oh geez, the select board gave us a charge at the time of the opt-in vote, and we gotta like take some kind of crack at it. But it turned out to be a bigger creature than we realized. Yeah, we did. Fuck you.
We're big. So if we leave it in like it is and proceed forward, the risk is that we might get sued.
Well, the first item
But-
they would do, it would be to petition against it, is that correct, Kathleen?
That would be, yeah, there's gotta be some.
If we approve the changes and leave in the prohibition from the downtown, we're not talking about immediate litigation. The process would first start with a petition of the citizens to change the the zoning, or no?
So it would be somebody that wanted to cite a business in the downtown, or someone filing a suit on their behalf. If you're talking about what the next step would be, Jen, is there a citizen's petition if people are not happy with the zoning bylaw as it?
Yeah, I don't know, I'd have to look into that, if people can appeal the whole bylaw amendment. But, like John was saying behind me, they also have legal recourse to just, bring suit against the town in general.
An individual who feels he's lost the opportunity to compete in the marketplace can always bring a suit.
Okay.
I would say the second risk, Dan, like there's the whole legal risk, and then the second risk is if you keep it in there and you go to another hearing, then, you could end up having more people show up at that hearing, and then you could end up like really compromising your schedule, which will compromise getting the
NDA.
NDA incentive in
Yeah.
time for Summit to make their construction schedule. So that would be a sad thing to lose all of our affordable housing progress.
What's your suggestion?
Wow.
I hear your argument on that, but I also don't wanna take the cannabis conversation lightly because we may bump Summit's construction schedule, Like, I understand, but let's take the time we need to make whatever decision we think is best. And if that bumps Summit a little bit, then so be it. But if we can make a decision tonight, then we're all set, right?
maybe it's not my place to make a recommendation or a request, but if my dream came true, you guys would just take it out for now and deal with it separately. Take the public input you need, get the legal advice you need, see how this pans out across the way, and then do another round of bylaw edits to deal with the cannabis issue on its own.
Separately.
So if we take it out, what does that mean, though, in practical terms?
It means you've got, that would be a substantial change, and your next meeting on August 9th would be a public hearing. And then you'd have an item on your agenda right after the public hearing to adopt the bylaw, so it wouldn't compromise the progress we're making on the affordable housing stuff.
Right, no, I meant, what does that mean for cannabis if we're
Sorry?
not regulating it?
Means that we would not regulate it.
We would not regulate it.
Separately.
But in the meantime, before we get something on the books,
Goes through zoning like any other business.
okay,
change
but there'll
use.
be no constraint on that particular type of business, so if somebody wanted to jump in there in that gap, they could, the way Dave
It'd be
jumped in.
Exactly, it'd be treated the way it is now, like any other retail.
Okay.
Right now, in the proposed zoning, cannabis retail is conditional use in highway and mixed use.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about whether it should also be allowed in CB as conditional?
Right.
That's the question?
Yeah, and that's the strip that goes from the Congregational Church to the traffic circle.
And so
right
the change is
south.
just changing it from excluded to conditional use in that one district.
I mean, it's up to you how many
Okay.
districts you want to
Just
allow
making
it
sure
in.
we know what the
Right,
changes that we're
right.
discussing.
Right.
And conditional use means development review, look at all of the factors that they have available. Okay.
We also have a hand up by Elise Shan.
Pardon?
We have a hand up
Oh,
by
sorry.
Elise.
Sure.
Are you bringing them in? Hi, Elise.
Oh, sorry, I'm very backlit. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
I can myself, so yes, you can hear me. I just want to point out that it really isn't just an issue for Summit and that parcel if these regs get delayed. It's something for the Addison County Community Trust too. I think you have sellers right now, or rather potential sellers, who might be listing their property that could be developable, that could stimulate more housing development, but people are in a very wait and see mode right now with these regulations. And obviously, if the select board feels like, the cannabis issue is one that needs to be revisited, then so be it, but I just think that you should be aware that there is a cost to housing development across the board, not just for Summit, and I would encourage you to adopt these regulations, and then try to treat the cannabis separately so that we can move forward with trying to develop more housing in Middlebury.
Well, it's not adopting these regulations, it's changing the cannabis regulation, because if we adopt the regulations as you've presented now,
We can't.
right,
What she's talking about is stay on our timeline, which means we need to make it
we need to
into a
make
major
it
action.
tonight.
So,
Right.
so why don't we do this, if the board will support this, we'll pull out the cannabis, and we're gonna move the greater package forward with a couple minors that you need to get back to us. We'll warn the second hearing, and we're gonna ask you to do some more research and come back to us immediately on what your recommendation is on the cannabis, and that would be a separate, standalone, amendment to the zoning.
Yeah, we'll get that on our PC agenda straight away.
Okay?
So how would that amendment work? What would be the process for that amendment?
Same as what we're doing now.
So that means that currently, it would be as all other retail, which is the underlying existing zoning. And we will consider a specific cannabis retail, use soon.
What would be the timeline on that?
I'm
I
asking.
mean,
I'm
what
asking-
what I'm saying is if
asking them
next,
to get it
in
back to-
a month, if we come up and say we're gonna limit the, what is it?
Doesn't, the big deal about it is that you're taking the contentious portion that could blow up the rest of all this good work that's being done
Okay.
out of it, and we're handling it separately, so that you got two actions, one that can stand alone, pass through, and won't get shot down, and then one that we will address independently, and we will seek some, we'll seek some public input and see if the public isn't, what the public's in support of. What would they like to do? I think we'll get John Flowers to write, John's watching anyways, so, John, we need you to write an article about how the select board is conflicted and wants to know what the town's opinion is on that.
Wow.
I like that, Brian.
So Dan, being that the select board is conflicted, I think I would probably advise the planning commission to give you something similar to what you're seeing tonight, so that once it's warned by the select board, then any new incoming applications need to be reviewed under both sets of regulations, with the more stringent set taking precedent. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I
Because-
do. Okay.
And then that gives you the chance to have as many public hearings as you want, and like invite anybody in and just take your time, like getting input, like, so that you
Okay.
don't feel like you're carrying the weight on
Understand.
7 shoulders,
See what-
14 shoulders.
Yep.
Just makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
You guys support that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. You got your marching orders? Jen, you got everything you need from us?
Oh yeah, I'm very happy, thank you.
Okay. So if there are no further comments regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, I'm going to call the public hearing closed at 8:36. Whew. Thank you all for your thoughtful participation.
So we got the easiest thing done. Now we're gonna move on to,
Okay.
thanks, Dan, that was great.
Got it.
Thank you.
Nick, Frem, and Eugene, please. So,
Nick all by himself can make a select board meeting about 3 hours long, so.
I'm trying to remember a time when the meeting ever went longer. It's a big issue. I can't offhand remember.
Make sure you state your name.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know who you are.
so I asked these three to join us this evening and give us an update, so that the board had an update on a number of different things. As you know, the board asked Nick to represent us on the master planning process, and Eugene is representing the Airport Association, and Prem and Nick have been working on a separate but parallel process, which was to try to improve communications and make it so that things flowed a little better between the V-Trans group, the airport, the neighbors, and the town, so that we all had shared vision and picture of what was going on and when things were happening. And so I asked them to, we just got done last week, the first round presentation from the consultant and V-Trans on the master planning. I see some familiar faces that attended that here. And so I wanted the ones that had been the designated reps to come and share their observations and thoughts with the board. And so, thank you.
Okay, well, just to first answer a couple of questions. Yes, it is good to see all of you. Selectman Hooper, you look much better there than I ever did, and Selectwoman Esther, I hope he's treating you better than I did.
You both did great.
What about me?
And just to point out a little digression, just purchased today 2 seats on train 290, Amtrak 290.
Aw, that's great.
Middlebury to New York.
Yeah.
I heard that was a little difficult to do today.
It actually, the website did not function as well as it should have, but certainly calling them, they have an arrangement where they'll call you back, and the agent did within 10 minutes, and it was a smooth, seamless purchase.
Perfect.
So I guess we will see all of you on the train?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's such a long time coming. I sit back and think of how long ago we talked about that, and it's here. So anyway, you've got my notes here. As you know, I always was one for writing things down, and so I have this to sort of keep somewhat of a linear thought process, and be assisted by good friends Prem and Eugene, who have been helping as we've gone through this town reps for the master plan process. So I'm going to give you a brief update on the master plan for Middlebury State Airport. And it's an ongoing dialogue. You know, it has been right along, constant communication, various technical advisory committee meetings that we've been on, participating in, and in communications as well with, besides that, with V-Trans and with the consultants. So, as you know, you've appointed Eugene Roy to be a technical advisory committee member representing the Middlebury Neighborhood Airport Association, which goes by the acronym MANA, and that was a wise decision. He's been the one who's been receiving and fielding many of the questions, putting them into a unified format to be able to present it onto V-Trans. And Prem has been aiding with that in great dialogue with the MANA community. That was a good decision. And as you appointed me to be the town representative on the TAC, and I suppose the jury is still out as to whether that was a good decision or not. But you know, if I say something in error or stupid, you're partially to blame for that. So anyway, just a little bit of description. The Vermont Agency of Transportation, or V-Trans, is in the process of updating the airport master plan for Middlebury State Airport, which goes by its federal designation of 6 Bravo 0. Airports have these various designations. And this is something that's required by the Federal Aviation Administration on a regular basis, and that's used to establish critical, immediate, and then long-term needs for the airport. The last time this was done, one of the critical needs identified was improving the safety of the runway and the taxiways, and that was, once it was in the master plan, it moved into the federal procurement cycle for critical, and the runway was in fact enhanced to a safer point. And there is no plan going forward to expand that runway. It's in good condition right now. It's safe, it's proper for the category of airplanes that fly in and out of here, and there's no intention to change that. So, and airports, you know, this process for airports is not that different from what happens with other parts of the transportation network, such as roads, railroads, waterways. They all go through this planning process, and whereby you know, the respective regulatory agency can then determine what is needed to go forward. And they're all following under, every transport mechanism falls under the professional standards and regulations of the overseeing agency. So again, the FAA is the overseeing agency. And they establish the calculating methodologies that are used by various consulting teams to establish things such as traffic flow and projected growth or decline in usage and operating procedures. So that's going on. To let you know, basically, this airport is a local general aviation airport. It serves private, small aircraft. They're either individually owned or corporate owned, and we have some corporations that use their aircraft for their business purposes. It also sees things such as periodic air taxi service, bringing people who are associated with businesses here. Green Mountain Beverage is a case in point where their taxi may come in periodically and bring in some of their distributors or that. Flight training has been done here in the past. It's not currently done at this point, but that is something that could occur. There's periodic angel flights where pilots donate their time to come in and transport critically ill individuals, or those who need specialized medical transport, to a more advanced center for that. And it has a huge role as a maintenance airport, and it has for many, many years, continues as such, and will be envisioned as among the uses in the future. There is no commercial service at Middlebury Airport, nor is there any intention to bring that. We have a major airport to the north at Burlington, and a smaller commercial airport at Rutland to the south. There would be no economic reason to change that. So it will stay as this general aviation airport. And that's what the master plan is built The master plan is in draft stages, and we've had various technical advisory committee meetings, and it was the 30th of June, we had the first of the public, or the most recent first of the public hearings on the draft. Heather was there, Brian was there, and we were there. And what's emerging in this recommendations will be upgrading navigational equipment for safer operations and extended operating periods. There's various devices they use to, one is a precision approach guide, which is essentially a small box that helps the pilots determine if they're too high, too low, too right, left. So as they're lining up for the runway, there's some GPS improvements that are being examined. Lighting has been discussed, and I don't think that has fully been finalized. Most recently we heard is it is not in the current recommendation by the consulting group, but it is something that still keeps getting constantly requested. Additional hangars for aircraft storage and for the maintenance needs of the airport is being requested. As I said, there are businesses that depend on their airplanes here, and for them to be able to house these aircraft in a weather-tight environment is beneficial. There's discussion of a terminal facility, and as I say, there's no commercial airport, but I'll get into that a little bit as to what that means. It's basically a pilot rest area and a ready area. So this is where they can, pilots who come in here, or either those who start out of here can do their flight preparation, their pre-flight training, and those who are transient, who may be coming through, can do things, everything from use a restroom to duck in from weather conditions or just rest. So that is some there on there. So then, again, with this short allotted time, I'm not going to get into the details of master plan. It's a complex, it's a voluminous document, and it is on VTrans website, and it will keep changing. If any of you have specific comments you would like presented to VTrans, then please present them, and we'll make sure that they get through to. So, and the plan is to complete this master plan on or about the end of the year. It's coming up on its due date.
When is that?
Oh, about the end of the year is what we're looking at. It's a bit of a dynamic date, John, but that's what they're aiming for, because they want to get this done as soon as possible. So we have this technical advisory committee group. It is representatives, it's Eugene, it's myself, representing all of you, and VTrans and the consultants. Now, Eugene has been the one specifically, more than any, working with the MANA group, and he's done an outstanding job with that. But we recognize too, because again, as select board, we all know that represent the community as a whole. So we want to make sure, and I always found personally it was best to understand as many viewpoints as possible, as I know you do. So while we have MANA, who has been very involved and vocal in issues here, we also have to recognize that there are those Middlebury residents who live in the area around, not far from the airport, but have chosen not to be a part of MANA, or for whatever reason are not a part. There's many of those people. Also recognition that it is part of Middlebury's economy. And so therefore that we need to get some input from the community, the broader community. And then of course those who rely on the airport for their livelihood. So we wanted to make sure that we had a good balanced input, and we're not hearing just exclusively one viewpoint versus others. So we've been working everything we can to be broad on that. So the MANA meetings, Eugene and I and Prem has been very, very helpful on this, have been invaluable. We have some really good communicators here. We've been able to gain understanding as to many of the concerns they're presenting, including what the impact of navigational aids would be, or what the impact of hangars would be, or a terminal, or added traffic could be on there. One of the things we heard early on was that VTrans was not communicating well. And I recall having those conversations years ago before we did the bridge project, but then things changed at a later point of bridge project, and we were doing that. And Prem will speak more to that, but I think what we've observed is it's not so much a matter of VTrans communication and not doing that well, and I think Michelle Boomhauer and her staff have demonstrated good effort and will to make sure communication's out. I think what we recognized early on is the issue appeared to be one not necessarily of the communicating, but of the way it was being communicated. I run into this quite often in my own professional life, where I'm dealing with consultants who are quite good at what they do. And they have a target audience that they're focusing on, but they don't recognize that there's multiple audiences in there. So what they often encounter is a situation where they're speaking in vernacular, they're speaking in acronyms that to those who are in the business, they understand. But to those who are outside of it, who are very smart people and are part of the whole decision-making process, that these terms become foreign. So we've focused part of our communication on getting to the point where the consultants would recognize that their audience is broader than just the FAA. Now, the FAA is certainly a prime, because that's for the purpose of this project, but that in fact, they also need to be able to speak in manners that are understood by the broader community. Give you an example, is lighting. Lighting has come up as something that's caused a lot of consternation, and for one who's not familiar with airport options, and but has been exposed to lighting through large commercial airports, you think, my God, they're going to put Logan Airport out here, you know, with constant lights, a lot of them all the time, and really change the impact of the area. But in fact, there are other options, and for a small general aviation airport, it tends to be what's called pilot-activated lighting. It's normally dark, the pilot is approaching, requests the lights come on, they come on for a brief time, long enough for the pilot to land, and then they go off. And the lights are targeted toward the pilot, not across the ground, where they're not going to do any good. So that was something that, and once we started having those conversations, people started to understand, okay, this does not seem to be as horrific as I thought it would be. Terminal, again, we hear terminal, I think commercial flights, and that's a legitimate concern when you first heard that. But as we've had these communications with many people, it seems to have subsided many of the anxieties. I wouldn't say they've all gone away, but they have. One of the others, when you look at, and this is a classic consultant way of approaching things, and engineering consultants specifically, is they'll say, okay, the standard, they'll start off with what the standard allows. And if you do that, just in the runway issue alone, the dimension of this runway after the 2017 improvement, by FAA standards, can handle 97 airplanes an hour. Now that's more than Logan. And so when you sit back and you think, okay, I understand where some of the concerns would come, but then when you read further into the document and they do some evaluation based on some FAA guidelines, you find that in fact, still talking maybe 1 to 2 an hour. And that's a peak time. If you go out there at the airport, certain days you may not see anything for several hours, and other days you may see a higher volume. But averaged over a year, it's going to be in the vicinity of 1 to 2 takeoffs and landings an hour. So, you know, those were many of the things that we felt was important to, one, get an understanding of, and two, to make sure that the consultants presented such. And I would say that Eugene and I experienced a technical advisory committee. There was sort of a run-through for preparation for the last public hearing that happened, and I think they paid more attention to us. And so when we had the public hearing, I believe they were able to communicate to a broader audience, and recognizing these are all smart people in this room who had an interest in what they were doing, and that they weren't just talking to those who understood their vernacular solely. So we spoke with the Manor Group. Also, one of the things that we recognized, that there were several people that, many of us know them for years, who live in that area who were not participating. So we tried to reach out and get some input to what their thoughts were. Many of them were people who had constructed those houses up in the area up on the hill up behind there. Several live in the village of East Middlebury. And by and large, what was fascinating is we did not hear an objection to the airport. I thought that was kind of interesting, universal across, as they said, we know the airport's there, but one person said to me, I'd rather, you know, to me, I'd really have more concern being on 116 with some of the heavy trucks going by. And so there just was not anything that overwhelmingly said, we don't want this airport here, or we don't want it, you know, they're quite comfortable with the way it is. And it's dynamic. It has had varying levels of takeoffs and landings. Actually, prior to 2017 was a higher average because of one of the businesses that was out there at the time. I want to put one thing to rest that still came up twice in my conversation with others, is that we're okay with the airport, but we've heard that Munson Road was going to be closed and the runway extended. This went back, I remember hearing this back in 2015, 2016. It was never in a plan to do that, but somehow it was a rumor that started and sometimes took on its own life. So I can say categorically, Munson Road's not going to be closed and they're not extending the runway. The runway is what it is and will not change ad infinitum, certainly in this master plan. Look, I reached out a bit to some of the residents outside the immediate area because, again, it is part of Middlebury's economy, just like the industrial park is, just like the auto dealers and the retail sectors are, just like downtown is. And it ranged from, ambivalence about it to I don't have anything negative to say about it. Several people said, well, I know people who've worked out there. One interesting story is one local resident, his daughter became interested in aircraft years ago. Spent a fair bit of time out there as a child. Ultimately, she became one of the first women captains for Frontier Airlines. So it's kind of one of those local stories of good. But by and large, I would say the residents had no real negative feelings or often feelings one way or another toward the airport. And then there are those who depend on it for its economic livelihood. And, again, when you look at what the master plan is going to do, it's going to essentially continue more of the same. It'll be general aviation, maintenance, things like that. I'm going to give you some of the examples. And maintenance is a very critical role that it does play. It's one of these airports that is kind of out of the mainstream, so it becomes, Burlington, for example, doesn't really want more of these type of facilities there because it takes up valuable real estate for what a major airport like that should do. It actually fills a pretty nice role as a place where a plane can come in at some point in the week, be serviced, and go out, whether it's rested sometime that week or 2 or 3 months later, depending on the extent of work. It first became a maintenance airport. When you go back in history, back around 1975, when a guy named Jack Downey started John Downey Aviation. It was seasonal until '85, at which point Jack expanded. He had 23 employees out there doing heavy maintenance at the time, including for a regional airline known as Commute Air, who had 48 airplanes, and they used to fly regionally under the banners for U.S. Air and Continental. And so he had these employees who were part of the community doing the service on this type of aircraft. At that time, they were running around 10,000 takeoff and landing operations a year. Jack ultimately retired, closed the business down, sold it to a guy named Bill Hanf, who has a company called Green Mountain Avionics. Another business out there is J&M Aviation with a guy named Mike Vincent. He does general maintenance on aircraft. He said 17 employees before COVID hit. Now he has 4, but he sees business coming back. His specialty is actually painting, so it's not unusual to find an aircraft from the Caribbean, from an airline out there being painted, and he does those kind of specialty services. And then the other I mentioned was Bill Hanf with Green Mountain Avionics, who his primary emphasis is on installing safety systems, avionic grid communications, navigations into airplanes. He was a local guy. He grew up in Bristol, went off into the military, worked for some aircraft manufacturers in Southern California, came back to start this business, started himself. He now has 10 employees, which is an interesting group there because some of them are young people who grew up here, were able to get training in the field of aviation, are getting further training working for Bill, and they said if we didn't have this opportunity, we would have to leave the area. And then others who have moved into the area. He's right now, he's one of those people that looks at the hangar aspect of the master plan and says, I need more so that I can continue to serve my customers well. One of the sideline is he was working last week for a customer in Guyana, or Ghana, so his reach is rather far. So we have that, and then there are people such as Sean Flynn, who has Silver Maple Construction. He actually supports 12 to 25 of his employees seasonally, depending, taking them to different construction projects around the Northeast. And then they're able to, they're local and are able to afford good jobs. So, again, it's a moving process, but we want to make sure that the various stakeholders are represented, the words get in, so that this master plan is something that comes out that's palatable for the community as a whole. And there will be another public hearing coming on. There's more technical advisory committees. In fact, I think we have one next week. And so if there's immediate items or questions you'd like injected in, now's the time that we can get that in. But we are moving forward, and I feel we're moving in a good way. And I'd like to have Prem and Eugene add their commentary.
All right, thanks, Nick. All right, like Nick, I'm happy to see all of you, although I'm not so sure about my friend Farhad. Yesterday, the day before, we had a phone conversation, and I initially didn't recognize his voice, and he let me have it. So I'm a little intimidated right now. Okay. I want to speak just very briefly on two issues that I've been involved in. The first is as the communication liaison between MANA and VTrans, and hence the select board. I'm one of the founding members of MANA. I'm actually the one who came up with the title and the acronym. I live a couple hundred yards from the airport, so I do have a lot of skin in the game. One of our major concerns was that we have the opportunity as a community surrounding the airport to receive timely and accurate information from VTrans so that we know what's going on. And I'd have to say, really, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that's been accomplished. Michelle Boomhauer has been extraordinary. She's an exemplary professional, and she's followed through on everything she said she's going to do. We currently have monthly meetings established with representatives of VTrans, MANA, and the town. Michelle is responsible for compiling the minutes of those meetings and ensuring that they're presented on the town website. In addition, she has taken on the responsibility to ensure that all information related to airport operations and development are posted on the VTrans website and with Kathleen's help on the town website. Secondly, the master plan itself. It's somewhat of a difficult document for a layperson to labor through, but with enough diligence, it is comprehensible. And I would like to clearly state that when we gathered in the winter as a neighbors association and identified the major issues that concerned us, that they have all been addressed to our satisfaction in the master plan. Very briefly, we were concerned that the airport would be developed and expanded into an airport no longer consistent to what we understand as a neighborhood and a community airport. The master plan details that the airport is sustaining its B1 classification, which essentially means its priority is to serve very small aircraft. Secondly, we were concerned about a runway extension because this rumor of an additional extension and the closure of Munson Road had been floating around. Now we know in the master plan there is no runway extension. The third major item was lights. As Nick pointed out, and you can include me in this, when I heard lights, I pictured, lights at an airport and beacons and Logan. Well, it turns out that that's not the case, and that the only lights being proposed are unobtrusive and pilot operated, and the what's the name of the device?
It goes under the acronym of PAPI, which is a precision instrument something.
Yeah, which seems like a valid means of ensuring pilot safety, and the lights that are emanated are not visible from the ground. So what more could we ask for? Finally, there were environmental concerns, particularly the purity and the protection of the aquifer. And again, being a layperson, when you hear, I'll speak for myself, when I heard that the town's water supply is under the airport, I didn't know what that meant. And it took a lot of diligence, it took a lot of education by speaking to people outside of my immediate circle and learning that for all intents and purposes, the aquifer is protected. And I think that concern should be laid to rest. The only other thing I'd like to add is that I think I speak for all of the residents that we appreciate the diligence and your assistance in setting up these communication protocols. And thank you. And I'd also encourage you to, if you have the time, to speak with the business owners. They've been invaluable to me for expanding my sense of what a community airport means, how avionics functions at a small airport, and the value of small businesses at an airport. You'll hear from us, but they may not be as proactive as we are. So I suppose on behalf of them, I'm encouraging you to seek their input too. So.
And
Thank you.
certainly, if you wish to have a tour and see what goes on out there, then that could certainly be arranged. We actually had Senator Hardy, who yesterday came out and visited the airport, spent a fair bit of time with Bill Hanf, saw his operation, got to meet some of the people, these young people who've been able to stay here where they grew up, and the young people were able to move here and setting down the future of this area. And so I think it was very informative. I think it opened up her understanding of it, and she was able to then express certainly some of the concerns that she's had. And so that could be set up if that was something you wanted.
Eugene?
Yes, well, both these guys basically said everything I was gonna say, so I'm not gonna repeat it. But, there's one last thing that's not really part of the master plan yet, but the businesses, we went down and we visited as a group, talking to both of the people there. It is about, the berm. A berm and a spot where the plane goes in, where they do all the rev that went in, what's called an R.
Basically it's a blanking on the acronym now, but it's essentially before an airplane takes off, it's a run-up area.
It's a run-up area.
And it's where they make sure everything's functioning, because you do not want to start taking off and have your airplane come apart. It's never good. So they go through this. So it's a noise abatement issue, is that, and Eugene's been very strong on endorsing that, and I think we're seeing a broad array of ideas are starting to be evaluated for noise abatement.
Yeah, even the meeting that we had last time with the people doing up the master plan there, they even brought it up. And it's something that said they've done it to a lot of other airports. A lot of other airports do have a ERM system set up there. It keeps the neighborhood association a hell of a lot better. And it's not asking for a lot, it's not a big deal. It's not really in the plans yet, but I want the town of Middlebury with us. Everything else is pretty much straightforward, the way you said it, me said it. And, it was nice meeting the business people down there, because, they're all good people, and they know we're neighbors. So it's not like, too bad. It's not like that.
That's great. Yeah.
So, I thank all you guys for listening, and, see if we can get something done.
Anybody have any questions of the three of them?
I have one, and maybe a follow-up after that. So, thank you for the update, Nick, and Eugene. Thanks for the opening. I'll be careful next time with you. I mean, Paul, I guess. But no disrespect to you. I had a question about the hangar. We didn't talk much about it. When I met with you at Andy's house, we talked about the placement of the hangars, and I was under the impression that those are negotiable. And when we met with Brian and you and I, we talked about that also. Is it still the same case?
It is still the same case. And this is one of the things where sometimes consultants get a little ahead of themselves. And I don't think there was as much communication with them initially with the users. So there's a need for hangars out there. In fact, if you talk to the people who are familiar with the airport who operate it, that's probably the number one thing they say, whether it's for, again, guys like Sean Flynn being able to keep his aircraft ice protected so that he uses this effectively in the winter as does in the summer. And of course, people the businesses who are in the maintenance field, so they do that. So what happened with this consulting group is they said, okay, we need X square feet of hangars. I think it's around 50,000 square feet. So it's almost like a monopoly exercise. They started spotting, geometric shapes around the field. Now, what that does, and there tends to be two primary areas where these are going to be. One is over in the area of yours and Andy's house that they showed up, and one is to the south end past Bill. What they're really doing at that point is they're trying to get a pre-permit for a quantity of hangars. Now, they will go through the Act 250 review, all the water quality, all the things like that are done. But then before anything can be built, first of all, there would have to be somebody coming forward saying, I want to build a hangar. And just to make it clear, the state does not build these hangars. These are private that are on these land on airports. At that point, they would have to put a clear argument as to why they need that and the space. And then it would go for, as I understand, a secondary review, at which point it could be approved or rejected in a certain location. And in fact, actually, the point you're talking about, Fahad, I'm glad you brought that up, is actually the largest hangar they showed probably is, when you talk to the business out there, is in the least desirable location. Because it's a maintenance size hangar, but it's in an area where the individual airplanes are. And when you talk to people who are in the maintenance business, they say, I'd like that hangar, but I'd like it right next to my others. And which is in an area that is where there's clumps of hangars. So yes, that does become negotiable, and nothing is cast.
So the follow-up question is, I see in this report where Act 250 amendment has been submitted for the hangars. So is it not site-specific? Is it just a general Act 250?
It is, as I understand, the general Act 250 to put X square foot of hangars there, along with navigation.
I'm actually surprised that they even consider that location for a hangar, which is completely to the north of everything else. Like Bill Hanf said, that it doesn't make sense for you to have a hangar that far out.
Yes, and that's been part of the aspect of getting better communication even among the users, because I think that was lacking there as well early on, and is now better. But certainly in talking to the businesses who are there, they said that's not right with it.
Yeah.
That's the smaller ones over there. That would be basically the lodge.
Okay.
So yes, but it does become negotiable. But they're trying to look out 20 years of what could.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you setting up those meetings.
Yes, sir?
I would like to take you up on your offer, Nick, and I would love to visit the airport and take a tour. So.
Okay. Well, we can set that up, whether it's individual or all. I mean, I don't do it.
If you can arrange a flight, so.
If we get a flight, I get to fly the plane.
Actually, one of the side perks of this gig, and I will have to admit it because it'll come out eventually, is when Senator Hardy was there yesterday, getting a view of the whole thing. Then Bill Hanf said, well, I think it's important for you to understand actually how the operations work here, what pilots do, and how the traffic patterns work, so you can see it, understand what does a run-up mean and all that. And Bill said to me, "You going along for the ride too?" And it's like, yes, I am. So it was very invaluable, I think, for her to understand, not just for this airport, but for transportation systems in general, as to how they work and the protocols that people who fly airplanes are a pretty regimented bunch, by and large. Because if they're not, then they don't get to be able to do that anymore.
This report is fantastic. It sounds like V-Trans has really improved their understanding and inclusion and really cleared up a lot of things. And this is just such a better stance than the one that we were presented with when this came to our attention. And it just feels great on this side of things.
I'm reminded back again, having history on the board, when we were in the bridge project early on, no pun intended, it was a train wreck. You know, there was communication. We felt like we were almost being thought of as second tier, and then they brought in the A-team, and things happened well. And I feel that, and Prem and Eugene would agree, we have an A-team on this one, and they are committed to doing things well.
Great.
What was nice there too, when we went and visited, if you go down there and talk to them, both the businesses down there understood that there are neighbors there.
Sure.
They did. And they're the one that says, yeah, a lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of places do have run-up areas. Why? It's because I'm sitting there and recommends, I know it's an airport there, but yes, there's a community there too.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be respectful for who we are. At least that's what I gathered when I left there.
Yeah.
Which is a good start, and I think V-Trans get going on too.
Great.
Okay, well, appreciate your guys' report, appreciate your efforts on behalf of everybody to try to ensure we have some better communications. This is not something that is done by any means. It's something that we have to continue to work on. I still think that there's a couple hanging chads that we need to work on. If there's a way to get the consultant to include in his recommendations a run-up area with berms, I think would be a great win. And I have decided I'm recusing myself from the Act 250 process so that I can represent the town in some of this reconfiguration. I think the best time, if we're going to try to get them to shift where that large hangar is, I think it's in that Act 250 process. And so I think those are kind of our two hanging chads as I see it. I am very aware that they have a lot of oversight. I have heard for years about the concern about the water contamination to our aquifer, and so reached out to somebody who actually knows something about it. I mean, I think it's part of my requirement to educate myself. And that aquifer it's kind of like Lake Dunmore, and I always pictured Fern Lake right underneath the airport. It's more like Lake Dunmore, and it's got tons of houses over it. It's got East Middlebury over it. You got gas stations. You got all kinds of stuff that is much more likely to pollute that aquifer than an airport that gets inspected pretty closely and doesn't have buried tanks. So that gave me a sense of solace that that isn't the greatest risk that airport poses to our community. So and I think sometimes people grab onto these things as scare tactics, and we really have an obligation to understand the issues and do best by the greater community. So, but I think there's still a couple things we really need to work hard on. See if we can turn the corner on those. And I really appreciate you guys coming tonight and filling us in on where you're at. I thought that the presentation, you know, I had a sick wife at home. I had to get home and get her dinner. So I stepped out before the end of it. But I thought the presentation, that consultant, I was really impressed with his professionalism. I wish they'd presented everything first. Some of those comments were, really dragged it on over stuff that, you know, I think I could have used my time a little better. But the presentation is in our packet. If you go through that presentation piece by piece and really look at it, you can understand what they're recommending. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and those two points you brought up, we're gonna be bringing up in the next technical advisory committee. Those are critical items.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good, and again, it is good to see all of you.
Whenever you are scheduling the restaurant, let me know.
Okay, yeah. I'll be heading away for a week after tomorrow, so, maybe, early next week.
Hold due respect, again.
See you when you get back.
Very well.
Trying.
All right, so good luck.
Karen, you remember what you're here for?
Back to back. She's
So I've been going to bed at like 9.
saying we should
Yeah.
have it back to back.
You've been sleeping back there, I noticed that. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I don't know why we should,
having a marathon.
we should put these easy things at the beginning.
I just, the residuals of.
Oh,
I had
okay.
COVID, actually.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I got it from there.
Yeah. Is that what she had? Yeah. That's no good.
It's good to see you.
That's the kind of room we're used to.
I know.
I guess nobody cares about the block party.
Nobody cares about the party.
That's okay.
It's okay, I'll be there.
No, thank you. Do you want me to wait for Andy and Farhad?
That's the aquifer?
That's your aquifer.
Oh, wow.
This is the,
So, just quickly.
Okay.
Okay. Zach and I went
They're not
downtown
leaking,
on
those
Saturday.
airports are not providing
And,
any pollution in those things. Above ground tanks are,
Got
they're-
our,
they're
I'm
protected.
so happy.
They're all on hardscape.
And I didn't
Yeah,
see Becky
yeah.
to let her know,
I mean,
but
look at this.
the Where's
This is
Waldo thing
unbelievable,
has
the
just
size of
been a favorite for ours, and it's so,
It's so simple.
like and we were like, oh, well, we'll go to a few and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
We ended up going to, I think we got 10.
Wow.
In,
How many
and,
weeks ago, John?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
and in every place we went, I found something to
I was
buy.
really blown away.
So much, no, so
Aquifers
much,
are huge.
so
That's
that
probably a
Becca was
small-
like, we're not shopping, we're looking for Waldo.
Look, I'm right on it. I'm right
So
here.
I just
the
have to tell
exact
you that
intention.
I think, you know,
Yeah,
walking,
really.
I think it's
That's-
such a
that's
fabulous
leach field she
program.
has in her
I just,
backyard.
I,
Duck
you know,
poop. That's what my yard is.
you
Duck
go in the
poop.
stores and you are looking around the stores at what the stores have while you're looking for Waldo.
And
And it's
inevitably, they have something
amazing.
that you didn't
I
know.
do want to move on here. Already
Sorry.
9:25.
I'm kidding. Okay.
Great chicken puzzle.
So, block party application for, permit application for August 4th. So this does look a little bit different than block parties that we've done in the past. I actually just had somebody ask me if the block party's coming back, and I was like, you know, honestly, events are not back in the sense that we're not really trying to recreate what was pre-COVID here. We're really sort of continually adapting. And in this instance, the market has been going so well. Our last one on Thursday night was absolutely incredible. We had 41 vendors, I think.
That's
and
amazing.
Hundreds of people, and it was really, I mean, it has turned into, our vision in the beginning was, you know, 12 to 15 vendors set up on that space, and, you know, kind of farmers market-esque, people kind of stroll through, and it's sort of a slow progression through the 4 hours, and it has really turned into essentially a festival every week, in terms of the number of people and how much people love it. And so, because it is a lot of work, and because it's going so well, I felt like it made a lot of sense to combine the block party with the market. And so we're gonna just, what we're proposing is to close off just the section of street that's adjacent, and that's really specifically because of safety. So I really didn't want to have a full market going on Triangle Park, and then the rest of the block party happening where you had to cross the
Right.
road into traffic. So what we're proposing doing is just closing off that section between Merchants Row and the post office. I'd like to try to maintain access for the postman to get in and out. And so I just want to block that piece off, and that's where we would do the dunk tank. I'm actually working with a vendor to bring in mini golf.
No.
So there'd be a few mini golf, like I think we're gonna do 3 6-hole courses on the street, and other kids' activities and games. And then we'll have the market going on. We'll have the music in the gazebo, which was what we've been doing for the market already. We're gonna do 2 bands instead of 1. So it'll be from 4 to 6 and 6 to 8. So, I think just kind of expands what it is that we're doing, spills it out into the street a little bit to give it that kind of fun, festival-y feel. We'll still have a lot of food, and just bring in a little bit more in terms of activities. So that's what I'm proposing for this year's block party, and how that evolves as we come out of COVID. If that ever happens, then we'll see. But that's what it felt like was kind of the right, path forward for the event for right now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I got a quick process question. I tend to do that.
Yeah.
You're here at 9:30.
Yeah.
This is something that I think it's great to have you here. It's great to have you here while we're discussing zoning and the downtown, all these things. But I think that things like this, we could put on a consent.
I just said that to her. We need to
Right,
put
like-
things at the beginning of the.
It's great to know about it, but I don't know that you're reaching a bunch of people by being here.
Right.
And I don't know if it's like,
The,
if it's the best way to communicate with you guys.
yeah, and the question really is it something that we would have questions about when you're shutting down the full downtown?
Mhm.
It's a little different, but it's borderline consent agenda.
Yeah, okay.
If I knew everybody who was in, I'd have it added in the consent agenda, but maybe people may have questions about the safety and
Yeah.
and whatnot. It's
Okay.
not quite as cut and dried as the mid-market, where they're just contained within the triangle.
Well,
But
let's use-
but then again, she was supposed to be on at 8 o'clock.
Oh, I know, that's what I was saying.
When we
Right?
set her up.
Nick.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw Nick on the agenda before me, I had to.
You knew it was
I
on.
wanted to be here for a minute.
I really feel like, I'm sorry, but I really feel like, because at this point, we all know, we need to put all the quick people first, because
Yeah.
you come in and
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it done.
I don't know, there's been
But you-
times I've been known to talk, Lindsay.
No.
We know you can talk, but we can vote quicker. So.
Okay, are we
The other
ready
thing I
to?
would just say is that I have been in touch with Tri-Valley, and they are talking about how they can deviate for that section of time.
That's true.
I don't envision any other issues, but I will be just communicating with Chief Shaw and Chief Hanley, just making sure that they're aware. We're doing this much truncated kind of version of this, and we're not doing the sod this year, so I don't envision really any issues coming up, but it'll just be, that's part of the process.
God, I was looking for that song.
I know.
That was so fun, that was so cool.
I know, and we may get it again at some point, but they already had been booked for the end of the month, so.
Okay,
I'll move to approve a public assemblage permit for the Better Middlebury Partnerships Block Party on August 4th, 2020, or 2022, sorry.
Second.
I don't wanna go back there.
I know, sorry.
all in favor signify by saying
It's
aye.
past my
Aye.
bedtime.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, good night, guys.
Hey, good night.
Karen, if you need a giant Connect 4, we have one.
I'll borrow that. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll email you, thank you.
Did Jen stay around, or she dialed in, or do you want me
Quit.
just to take? Okay,
I think that's her thing.
she is still
Oh,
there.
okay. Do you want to wave
Can
her
you let
in?
her know it's her turn for?
Is she on this?
Again, yeah, that's what I was saying, we should have put her 2 things together, because this was crummy.
Yeah, but no, it's hard to, it's hard to
She's been-
anticipate,
she's been
how long things are gonna take sometimes.
Yeah, no, I
Jen,
know.
we all
wasn't hard
want to
to
know,
predict
have
they
you
were
been
gonna take
productive in
time.
between your 2 presences here?
My 2 presentations?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Here we go. We don't feel quite-
Okay, there we
Gonna
go.
return in a second.
I was trying to advocate for you to always be back to back, but now you just blew it, so now
I get paid
it's always
double,
gonna
right?
be
For
like
doing
this.
2 things at the same time.
She gets tomorrow off for being here all night, so she's good with this. So.
Okay, Jen. About the local hazard mitigation plan fund?
Yes. Yep.
Contract?
Right, so I'm here tonight to ask you to approve the hiring of SEAM to do the local hazard mitigation plan. Our local hazard mitigation plan is, needs to be updated every once in a while, and ours is overdue right now. So we're excited to be jumping on it right away. She can start right away. July 15 is her start date, and then she would, you can see in the notes, she'd have it done beginning of next year. We had a response from Addison County Regional Planning as well. And you can see in my memo that, yeah, sometimes it's good to keep people separate, and it allows them to talk more. As Brian knows from being a chair, right? You get hampered and burdened sometimes when you have to be the chair, when you have to be the consultant, you know, like, so now I think Andrew will be able to speak freely, and the Conservation Commission will be able to weigh in freely, and we'll have a separate consultant managing the process. So I'd like to try it that way if you guys are game.
You've got a grant for most of it.
Yes.
Questions? Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to award contract to Seam Solutions to perform an update to the town's local hazard mitigation plan at a total cost of $7,425.
Second.
Moved and seconded. More time, any more questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thanks, Jen.
Great, I'll add it to my list.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
It's quite a to-do list you got there, huh?
Lots of public input. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Kathleen's gonna go through the DIDC's budget.
Yes, so the DIDC met in June and recommended a budget target of $33,333 for the board's consideration, which would include projects that they've already identified, a power source for Triangle Park events to facilitate vendors having access to power, and a pilot project for a porta potty on Mill Street. Even with a couple of porta potties downstairs, existing retailers are still getting a lot of traffic looking for porta potties, looking for bathrooms. Particularly the Stone Mill was mentioned as someone that gets a lot of traffic, so for that. Also, on the horizon for later in FY '23, Wi-Fi for Triangle Park, Merchants Row area, for vendors in part and others visiting the area. I have had some preliminary conversations with St. Stephen's Church about hosting that, and they've been receptive to that, so I'll be back at that with you soon. Cell phone charger, battery station, again, for visitors and tourists, and improved wayfinding and parking signs for the downtown. It's also something we're looking into.
Now, we spent a bunch of money on improved wayfarer and parking signs, I don't know, a few years ago. This continuation of it or replacing those?
This, the concept is more looking into what it might look like to have a business directory, something that we could change like you get at a mall. This is the map of the downtown, and you can slide in new vendors, new retailers.
As public signage, not as the
Yeah.
little
Like at
green
the-
maps that we get
Right,
everywhere.
right.
Like at the rec park, they have that sign.
Okay, interesting.
That'd be good.
Neat
But
idea.
that's something we're just starting to look into.
Okay. Questions?
Again, newbie here. Who is the Downtown Improvement District Commission?
Who is on it?
Yeah.
Um,
How is it set?
It's set up by ordinance.
Okay.
I think the minutes are in your packet, but we have Amy Ryan, who is the chair.
Okay.
Lorraine Tobias, Stacy Rainey, Adam Franco, and Bill Cunningham, Gary
And-
Baker, and Dan Brown.
If you go to-
Are these appointed?
Yes.
Yes, they're appointed.
Select board,
Gotcha.
but there's specific groups that these people have to represent.
Okay.
And there's a district.
Yes.
That
Right,
gets,
right.
that gets the
Yeah,
additional
yeah.
taxes.
Yeah.
Some
right.
reason the Swift House was the last one on the end of the line down there.
Yeah.
So we had to have Dan on.
Yeah, so I complained a lot.
I see.
And I listened.
Yeah, put me on this thing.
Yeah, it doesn't get that.
They have a website, you know, if you go to government and you go to commissions, go to downtown improvement, you can see who's on it, their packets are there, everything.
Okay, question.
You just
Any
have
other
to remember
questions?
like what type of.
Pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve an FY '23 downtown improvement district budget totaling $33,333.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I would like to thank the businesses that contribute to that, and I know they don't necessarily have a choice, but they've done some very meaningful projects that have made a difference in the downtown. And so I think they should be recognized for bellying up. I mean, it's investments in their business. It's one way to look at it, but it also, it really is helpful for the downtown, and that's why that was created some years ago. So, okay, Kathleen's gonna lead us through on tax rate.
Okay, so the town meeting approved a budget of, $7,881,063 at the March town meeting. And then also approved the appropriation of $750 for Addison Allies Network. So we are raising a total of $7,881,813, which is divided by our total municipal grant list of $9.8 million to come up with 84.24 cents as a calculated tax rate. We also pay for veterans exemptions from municipal taxes. There's a statewide exemption of $10,000, but the town also voted to increase that amount to $40,000. So we pay that amount on behalf of our veterans. It's a very small amount on the tax rate, 0.12 cents. So your total municipal tax rate is 80.3438 cents at the fire fund for 2 cents on the tax rate, and you come with 82.36 cents for your municipal tax rate.
Any questions on that? It's done by formula approach. It's not anything we really, we've already approved the budget, and so this is, we've got everything we need to approve the tax rate so they can get the bills out. I would ask for a motion then to establish that tax rate.
Just the first motion, right?
First motion.
I'll move to set the municipal tax rate for FY '23 at 82.36 cents per $100 of the property value.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Everybody understands what we're doing? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
And, hold on, let's see. That's something. We do the same thing with the downtown district budget that the select board just approved, coming up with a 5.12 cents, which is a slight reduction from 5.17 last year.
Questions on that?
Does the downtown district do these amazing hang baskets, or is that the town, general fund? Yeah. They're incredible.
They are incredible.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Okay, pleasure of the board on item number 2.
I'll move to set the downtown improvement district tax rate for FY '23 at 5.12 cents per $100 of property value.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the the good news is that I believe our education tax rate went down a little bit, so our tax rates will continue to be steady. So we've had a pretty good run of it.
And for those of us that are still watching, you'll get these tax rates to the printer and have the tax bills in the mail on Friday. So you'll be getting them early next week. There you have a lot of people that are very eager for their tax bills, and we thank them for their being so conscientious. And the first installment is due August 15th.
I can't wait to see all my tax bills. Oh, boy. So the board's being asked to approve a declaration of intent stating that the town will use bond proceeds to reimburse itself for the expense associated with the realignment of the Court Street Charles Monroe intersection. The declaration commits the town to complete such reimbursement within 18 months of either the date of the first expenditure of funds or the date that the project is placed in service, whichever is later. The town may also reimburse itself for expenses incurred up to 60 days before adoption of this resolution, including VHB's preliminary design work for the intersection. Town clerk will be the one to sign it, so we would be moving an intent authorizing town clerk Ann Webster's signature. For those of you who are watching still, the board has entered a purchase and sale agreement to purchase the old Maverick gas station site, and have been working for some years on a possibility to redesign that intersection, which is one of the, according to the traffic analysts, is the significant impediment to smooth flow of traffic through on Court Street. And so we're trying to fix that snag. And this intent to bond is something we will be bringing to you for a vote later. And it's queued up for discussion at a later date. So, any questions on that? If not, pleasure of the board.
I move to approve the declaration of intent to bond for expenses associated with the realignment of Court Charles Monroe intersection and authorize town clerk Ann Webster's signature.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next, it's on Monday, July 5th, 2022, Town Treasurer Jackie Sullivan asked Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to tender her resignation as Middlebury's elected Town Treasurer to the Middlebury Selectboard, effective upon appointment of a successor. The board is being requested to officially accept Jackie's resignation. According to 24 VSA, Section 127D describes the prescribed process for appointing an interim treasurer to fill the position until town meeting in 2023. And a draft notice of the vacancy will be published in the Addison Independent on Thursday, July 14th, 2022. Applications are due by Monday, July 25th, 2022. And nominations will be made by the Select Board on Tuesday, July 26, 2022, and appointments will be made on Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. I'm sure Jackie's gone to bed by now, but Jackie, we thank you for all the years that you've toiled for the town of Middlebury, and certainly wish you well. The conditions that have led Jackie to resign her position are not of her choosing, obviously, and so we send our prayers and thoughts your way, and we'll have to pick up the pieces and move on. That I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Town Treasurer Jackie Sullivan, effective upon appointment of a successor.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Have we considered non-elected?
We are moving that way. Now, we've talked about it in the past, but because we had an incumbent who was continuing to serve,
Yeah.
we left it, but we feel it should be an appointed position, and we're gonna take that to the voters for a charter change.
Good.
So we're looking for an interim, and then we're looking for a charter change. We have to also take the bond vote, so I think we're looking to do those two things during the general election cycle, I believe. So, okay?
Yeah.
Esther, you have check warrants.
So I move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $1,07,942.23, consisting of $884,170.47 for accounts payable and $123,771.76 for payroll for the period of June 29th, 2022 through July 12th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, board member concerns for Hot.
Well, since the meeting lasted until almost 10 now, and today is my 20th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
I'm just waiting to get home.
I'm
so-
surprised you showed up.
I missed last meeting.
Well, you,
also.
yeah, because you usually fold quickly, I know, so that's it.
So, yeah, that's fine, but, yeah, I have no concerns. Thank you.
So I would just echo what Andy said already about the hanging baskets. I came downtown with my daughter on Saturday. We wanted to go to the library and the peasant market, and we ended up going into the bookstore and getting our Where's Waldo passport, which it has been a few years since Where's Waldo's been going on. And I just think it is absolutely the best thing in Middlebury. It is so fun to walk around the stores looking for Waldo. And we thought, oh, we'll just go to a couple and then we'll come back. We ended up doing 10, finding 10 Waldos. And in every store, I think, just about, found something to purchase because I had to walk around, look at everything.
Sounds like a
And-
midnight stroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just fabulous because I go in these stores that I'm not regularly going in, seeing what they have, and I just think it's a great program. So kudos to Becky and the Vermont Bookshop for hosting that, and the other businesses that have Waldo up. They were all super excited to see us in there searching and were helpful, and if you haven't done it, I highly recommend it. So
Fun.
just had to share that with you.
I just want
Do we have to
add-
take a child? to
Can
it?
I add something
No.
real quick to my comments? So 2 of my sisters are here from India. My niece got married a couple of weeks ago, so they came to visit my older sister and my third sister. So I brought them downtown, and my older sister, who's in almost 7 years old. So I took her to the Lazarus Park, and she walked through that labyrinth, you know. I took a video of it, it was so cute. She's never seen anything like this. And they complimented every single flower basket that's hanging around. They're asking me, how do you water those things? I said, well, you know.
Becca asked me the same question. She said, how do they water those? And I said, I think they have some kind of wand thing.
Yeah,
that
a
they
tall
use."
wand and
There's a
water tank
hole,
on
and
the
I
back.
think there's a.
They really, like, you don't really appreciate them until you were walking on the sidewalk. I mean, they're
It's
just, they're
beautiful.
huge, they're amazing. Anyway,
Yep.
Nice.
so everyone involved, just great job. It's a lot of fun.
I'm excited, I'm gonna go do Where's Waldo?
You should do,
I have
you
something
should
to do.
definitely do it.
And I have nothing.
Okay, Esther?
Yeah, I want to say a few things. One, Jen, thank you. Just thank you, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do, and the way you presented it. That was so clear. And so thank you for your work. And Camp Cucamonga, I gotta give kudos to Dustin and Amber. My kid is having a ball. My kid is an introvert. Amber gives Lawrence a hug every time. But Lawrence is not the introvert, he's the extrovert. But anywho, it's just a welcoming community, and the kids are having a ball, and just so proud to send my kid there. And when I pick them up, they're so tired. So that is the point. That is the point you go to camp. Come home tired. So it's been great. And yeah, that's all I got.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, Andy, but my daughter's 12 in her last year of official Camp Cucamonga camper, and she's been going since whenever, anyway, she loves it too.
Yeah.
And it's just we are so lucky to have such a great resource like that in the town of Middlebury. So definitely kudos to Dustin and Scott and Amber, for sure.
Yes.
Well said, Amber. Or, sorry, Esther. I'm so tired.
Yeah, it's okay. It's so late. It's so late.
So when I travel, I've got a little bit of an eye for municipal services and the like. One thing about Rome, which is amazing, and I think of as we look at Portolets, is that there are running fountains all over this historic downtown, running all the time. You put your finger on it, and there's a little spit, a hole. They're called elephant trunks, I think. And you stop the flow at the bottom, and you get a little spray out that you can drink off of. And it's lovely. You don't need to always be carrying a water bottle and paying money for it. And I just think as we provide toilets, that this is a thing which has been lost in America in the last 30 years of my life, is having water fountains in places. Then when we were in Corsica, they had a lot of road work going on, and it would be one guy with 2 coordinated little stop signs that he'd set up, and he was just doing work, fixing things. I'm like, my God, I can't imagine this with less than 4 people in the States. And it's impressive to see the efficiency. They would be there for 2 hours and then gone, and they'd done their thing. And I'm like, this is great, and this cappuccino is delicious. And the complimentary traffic in Paris, the quality of the bike and scooter lanes, how much they're used is wonderful, and it really, I just get sad thinking that because of our tough winters, we can't have this lovely separation between the traffic and the motorized vehicles and the non-motorized vehicles, and have so much use of this great resource to get around through things. And it's too bad.
You know, one thing with technologies, with being in Italy and Rome, we have Zoom. You could have zoomed into the select board meeting. And,
it started
instead of getting me sucked in.
He was here. 3 a.m. Yeah.
I had a phone call with her at 11 o'clock at night over there, and
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Dan was here.
Okay.
Thank you,
I'm not as dedicated as Dan. I'll take that.
Lindsay?
I do not have anything. I would like to go home now.
I do have a question. Where in town do I buy a headset for a computer now that I've sucked into that?
Office
Put yourself
supplies
in
store,
that
probably.
That or you can,
Actually,
Kinney's or?
did you get, yeah, they all have it. Kenny's
Yeah.
would have it.
The gas
Yeah,
stations will have
stations
them.
yeah.
Everybody's got it. Last time you flew,
The headset he promised.
Yeah, really.
Three of them, so.
we have
Those
no.
never work. They work
we have no
once and then they're
executive
done.
session, Right?
Yes,
You never heard back, right?
thank you for suggesting that we not have the executive session.
Yeah, Andy was an overachiever. He wanted to have an executive session.
I wanted to know more about the electrical generation history and our recent communications there.
That's a long discussion.
Anyway,
I'm still learning about that one, because
Not this
nobody
week.
talks about that one.
Hey, thanks for all of your patience and engagement on these truly thorny but important issues tonight. So
We are not used to being here till 10.
We got spoiled. It was so nice.
I know. How about
It's
a
because
motion
people were
to adjourn,
here.
and then I can let you pack
I'll
up?
move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 9:55.
You say that now.
I know.